with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Republican Georgian Secretary of State says Lindsey Graham has been pressuring him to invalidate ballots. Meanwhile, Donald Trump blocking the transition big time. Joe Biden looking for a workaround. Meanwhile, Biden separately threatening to turn the page and not hold any wrongdoing in the Trump administration accountable. Speaking of holding them to account, now it's moderates trying to hold the Democratic leadership to account. California warns of a curfew in a bid to slow corona infections as Sweden is headed towards a lockdown. Biden getting pressured to provide college debt relief. Looks like he may do it. Republicans looking to auction off the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge before Joe Biden can get in and block that sale. NATO fears Trump will unilaterally pull out of Afghanistan. And just as a side note, Trump wanted to bomb Iran as recently as last Thursday. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate your being here. Joining me, of course, in studio. We're in studio today. Some days we won't be. Some days we will be. Sometimes we will be remote. Emma Vigeland. Emma, how are you?
I'm good, Sam. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. It is. It's just another Tuesday as we watch the Trump attempt to forestall, I guess, the results from this election continue to crumble all around. They keep sending waves and waves. I think they're on now attorney number like 43 or something in terms of going in. My understanding is that Rudy Giuliani is trying to see if he can show up in court. That actually I would watch. If they could put a camera in there, I would watch that on live TV.
They need to televise that like the OJ trial.
And indeed, Rudy Giuliani, that'd be quite a show. But really, the big story is going to come out of, and again, I mean, this is pretty shocking stuff where you have a Republican Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, who is now claiming that Lindsey Graham is leaning on him about the results. We will get to that in a moment. A bunch of stuff that we've got to talk about today. But let's start here with Joe Biden had some, we were talking about this before the show, some fairly progressive, relatively speaking,
Relative for him.
And in many respects, relative to where the Democratic Party, the elected leadership has been over the past, 15, 20 years in his platform that he never spoke about. I mean, it's quite clear that he wanted to make this election a referendum on Donald Trump. And unfortunately, the majority of Americans in this country decided that they wanted to dump Donald Trump. Sadly, that I think hurt down ballot races because they weren't running on anything that people could not vote for a Democrat down ballot and achieve what the main thrust of the Democrats was, which was to get rid of Donald Trump. And the Democratic Party did a very bad job. We've talked about this. We'll continue to talk about it, of holding Republicans to account. We have another example of this from Dick Durbin, the Democratic whip in the Senate. And we will talk about that in a bit. But let's start with Joe Biden. And one of the things, regardless of what happens in Georgia, where we have this runoff on January 5th, if both Democrats win, the Democrats will have a majority if you count the vice president being able to vote in the Senate, within the Senate. That is less relevant when it comes to things like normal legislation because of the filibuster. And it is clear at this point that Joe Manchin says he will not vote for the filibuster. Who knows? Well,
he's saying that on all over cable news, his favorite medium to get attention.
Well, exactly. I mean, the irony is, of course, if there was no filibuster and he was the 50th vote for the Democrats, he would get that much more attention. But I imagine there would be a huge race to be that 50th vote. Nevertheless, one thing you can do with 50 votes plus one in the vice president is to pass things through reconciliation. You do not, that if it is, reconciliation is a specific parliamentary move or a type of bill, if you will, that requires only a simple majority. There are restrictions on what constitutes a reconciliation bill. It has to deal exclusively with things that involve the government spending money. And so that comes into play if the Democrats take 2 seats in Georgia. Otherwise, we can imagine a tremendous amount of obstruction by the Republicans, although there are Americans who are desperate right now for stimulus. We have people on unemployment, extended unemployment. $600 benefits have dried up, but the actual extension of unemployment in terms of time, that's going to run out within a month or so. We have the stimulus checks, the $1,200 7 months ago, I think have been expended.
Well, if you were a smart American, you would have held on to it.
I would have held on to it, or I would have invested it.
Right, invested in gold or whatever.
Or,
right? That's
or
what regular people do.
Put it in the market. I mean, that $1,200. There will be a desperate need for stimulus. One of the mechanisms for that stimulus can come through executive action. If you read enough of those personal finance books, they'll tell you, if you're not paying 16% on your credit card, you're saving 16%, obviously, and you're earning 16%. You want to earn 5% or 10% on your money? Don't have any debt that you would be paying that money on. Well, so the point being that if you have the ability to relieve Americans of some debt, that will have a stimulating effect on the economy. It will put more money in people's pockets. They will be able to spend that money.
Right, but that gets in the way of directly sending money to corporations and socializing Wall Street. I mean, that's kind of what the game is. And now we're going to hear from Republicans lots of concern about the deficit and the debt.
Without a doubt.
Now that it's time to, after having an immensely dark winter where thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans are going to die and the economy is going to get in an even darker place, then fiscal responsibility and austerity will be the talking point.
Of course, it's like perennial after the Republicans lose an election.
Which makes that reconciliation point that you brought up even more important with taking back those 2 seats.
In the event that those seats don't come back in, executive actions are going to be crucial to provide at least some relief to people. Here's Joe Biden in Wilmington yesterday talking about, he is asked whether student loan forgiveness, because a huge amount of the student loan debt is held by the U.S. government. And that can be relieved by the executive branch, and that would be the president. Here is the question on Monday.
on the economy, the Vice President-elect talked about having an economy that works for working people. One thing I didn't hear you talk specifically about is canceling student loan debt. Does student loan forgiveness figure in your plan? Would you take executive action to achieve it?
It does figure in my plan. I've laid out in detail. For example, the legislation passed by the Democratic House calls for immediate $10,000 forgiveness of student loans. It's holding people up. They're in real trouble. They're having to make choices between paying their student loan and paying their rent, those kinds of decisions. It should be done immediately. In addition to that, as you know, I think that everything from community college straight through to doubling Pell Grants to making sure that we have access, free education for anyone making under $125,000 for 4 years of college. And there is a program that exists now under the law that forgives student loans for being able to engaging in public service. I'm going to institute a fundamental change in that so it's able to be available to everyone that, in fact, is engaged. It's not being very well managed right now. So I'm going to do all of those things. Thank you.
Now, there's a lot to sort of unpack there. Mm-hmm. Congress, I would say the House, has passed a bill providing immediate relief, $10,000. Now, of course, the Senate's not going to pass that. He seems to be okay with that $10,000. The question is, and now, because we do know that Schumer and Warren introduced a bill to forgive $50,000.
Right. Schumer, too, worried about a primary challenge, joining with Elizabeth Warren. I mean, if Warren had introduced it on their own, please, the Biden administration, shoo, we're not paying attention. But with the Senate Minority Leader signing on to it, I mean, then we could have some more ambitious legislation here, potentially, if Pelosi gets her caucus together. 30,000. Well, we don't necessarily need Congress in this instance. Let's just assume if we're in a situation where there is the Democrats do not have the majority in the Senate. They don't have the ability to pass anything unilaterally. Mitch McConnell is not going to be terribly helpful. They will pass something. Undoubtedly, it will say that corporations cannot be held liable for the way that they treat their workers or, frankly, the citizenry in general, their customers, for health and safety and no liability. And then maybe there'll be some money for corporations or something, or small businesses. Maybe there'll be a stimulus check. We don't know. But the point is, undoubtedly, if the Republicans have the ability to stop that legislation, they will do it. They will limit how much it helps people. Joe Biden, this is a unique opportunity for Joe Biden to both have the built-in justification for taking executive action on this point, the built-in justification for making it substantial in terms of how much debt is forgiven. The president of the American Association of Home Builders, I think this was 2 or 3 years ago, was saying at that time, and that was when student debt was about $1 trillion. It's now almost $1.5 trillion. Was saying the number one inhibitor of new home building was student debt. Well, I mean, for my generation, it's a fantasy to own a home for most people. I mean, it's not something that's even considered because so many are crippled by student loan debt. I believe the average is $30,000 for young people, and for everybody, I guess. So I think the difference in the House's less ambitious proposal is that they wanted to tie it to the second stimulus, right? The $10,000. And Schumer and Warren are signaling to Biden, because they're in the minority right now, this is what you can do via executive action. You can be more ambitious. You can circumvent it, which I mean, I think is good. I think it's really good. And it seems like he's listening, even though it seems like based on those comments, he's more inclined to only do $10,000.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. It's going to be interesting to see. He didn't cite Warren and Schumer, but as soon as he mentioned that, everybody else did.
Right.
And so if that lands somewhere around $30,000 and it is a mechanism in which to put more money in the economy, everybody wins. It is a stimulus. There was this NPR piece that talked about canceling student debt and what it would do. It could increase jobs by $4.4 million over the first 5 years. This is all student debt. Home ownership by $300,000 a year. GDP up by over $100 billion a year, and it would decrease the racial wealth gap. I mean, it just seems like a no-brainer for the overall health of the economy. If you want to just be
a standard neoliberal politician in this area.
Right. And look, I mean, and I think, look, that's the best that we can have. I mean, that is the reason why this is so much easier, because of the context, where this isn't a question of simply providing some equity or economic justice in the context of our society. It is much easier to do simply because it is going to be desperately needed, and you need to figure out any way possible that the executive can stimulate the economy. And this is the most obvious one that sits there. I would also say that there is a mechanism, it seems to me, to provide for that free college. If he wants to cap it at $125,000 and makes it easier, okay, fine. But one free college option, at least, in every state, and that is to provide loans and just have rolling debt forgiveness on those loans.
Yeah. You have to supplement the debt forgiveness with future college options so that debt isn't accrued. You can't just do it one time. Exactly. And by hook or crook, I mean, if this comes in because of the situation we're in, not because Joe Biden is a dyed-in-the-wool progressive, I'll take it. Well, you have to take a page out of the disaster capitalist book, as Naomi Klein put it in her book, which is that oftentimes actors who want to capitalize on situations, they use the vacuum created by disasters and national and international crises to put in place systems that benefit them financially. And I mean, the war in Iraq is a great example for the military industrial complex and things like that. But progressives and people looking at this pandemic, we could use this opportunity to implement policies like healthcare and student debt forgiveness. This is a time of crisis, so it allows for bigger thinking.
And if I'm not mistaken, I think, even Rahm Emanuel said at the time, in the wake of the financial crisis, you never want a serious crisis to go to waste, and that it's an opportunity. Now, I didn't appreciate the opportunity he took.
Yeah, he kind of wasted it.
But the point being is, you need to see this as an opportunity to create, once there is one-time student debt, once that idea happens and people can see that it's not, because I think that's the problem also that Republicans are going to have, try and revive this whole austerity and deficit hysteria, is that they already gave up the ghost. For 4 years, they didn't care at all. Now, I happen to think that we don't really have a problem with the deficit and debt because of the fact that we have such control over our own currency. But based upon their own logic, Republicans completely gave up that idea. And good. I hope we never see it again. Meanwhile, got to take we have a couple of words from our sponsors. Oh, this is it's a fun one. This is there's a couple of times where we get a sponsor where all of a sudden Brendan says, like, "Oh my gosh, I love those."
Oh, I can't
It's
wait.
my favorite. Here it is.
What is it?
Holidays are here. What are you going to get people? Are you already starting to make lists?
I already am. Yeah, I'm trying to get ahead of it.
It's smart. Do that. It's been this is one of those gifts that I think you would imagine is like a little bit, seems a little bit banal, but these things are really, they take a banal product and make them special. It's going to sound silly, but a great pair of socks.
Oh yeah.
I'm not kidding about this. And this is what I was shocked when I mentioned this, Brendan. Features. Socks. I don't know if you've ever tried these.
I've never heard of it, but gifts with like a purpose, things that people can functionally use, always the best.
Yes. Well, Features has a huge range of socks that are tailored for bicycling, for running, and for golfing, and for more. They have zone-specific compression, gives you targeted support, keeps your socks from slipping. And here's the thing. They are anatomically designed for your left and your right feet.
Wow.
They actually have a little L and a little R on them. It is molded, and you wouldn't think that it would make a difference because they're socks.
Right.
but they genuinely do. They're super comfortable. They're incredibly durable. They have all sorts of like lengths. I happen to be more of like a crew sock length, but and sometimes I'll go with the absolutely no, I don't know what those are called. The no thing. Brendan, What's your favorite? Brendan is like praises.
I wore them yesterday, actually, when I was working out. I do the like quarter crew. I like those, but I also have a pair that's like just above the ankle.
Well, my dad's a big cyclist, and I've been struggling to find something that he wants for Christmas. And
Boom.
Now, there we go. I have already decided.
I'm telling you, these are great socks. I've now basically come close to getting rid of all my old socks. It's very hard for me to throw out anything that isn't ripped.
Right.
But I'm starting to replace my socks with these features. I got the Elite. I got the Everyday Crew. I've tried them all. They're excellent. And now you can get $10 off your first pair of features just in time for the holidays. Go to features.com/majority for $10 off your first pair. That's features, FEETURES.com/majority. Now more than ever, of course, we're also thinking about our health. It can be hard to imagine going to a doctor's office right now. Fortunately, there's a practical and an affordable way to take control of your health. Get personalized care from the comfort of your home. You're seeing more and more of this. SteadyMD is your personal doctor online. It's telehealth, and it's done right. What happens is you start by taking a quiz, and you get matched with a licensed primary care physician who understands your health needs. I mean, they get very, very specific. They ask you all sorts of different questions about your lifestyle and this and that. Like, I almost felt like I was taking a Rorschach test and but there was stuff like, oh, what do you associate with? And I have a dad, and then like, what sports do you play? And so what happens is you take this quiz, and then they give you a 1-hour appointment with your doctor, so they get a basic idea of what your health situation is. After that, your doctor is available to you anytime by text, phone, or video chat. You have unlimited access for only $99 a month with no additional visit fees or copays. Each SteadyMD doctor has a limited number of patients, so they have time to listen and give you personal attention. SteadyMD can help you get and stay healthy, help you manage chronic conditions, any type of concerns, reduce stress, boost your immunity, all sorts of different things. So I went through the test, and they ask you stuff like, what are your health goals? Lose weight, reduce stress. For me, get sleep, of course. And they gave me 3 different options on doctors. Some are parents, so that they can sort of appreciate, like, why am I not getting sleep? Because I've got kids. You get kids. They understand that. One guy was a national champion snowboarder at age 13, apparently, because I put down that I snowboard. One of the doctors that they gave me was experienced in stress reduction. I mean, so they tailor it to you, and then they give you options as to their availability, et cetera, et cetera. It's sort of fascinating. SteadyMD is now accepting members of all ages in all 50 states. You can go to SteadyMD.com/majority. Take the free quiz. See which doctor is a perfect fit for you. SteadyMD.com/majority. There's no risk, no long-term commitment to get started. That's SteadyMD.com/majority. And then lastly, Emma, you might like this because you stay at home a lot now during this whole COVID thing, right? I mean, I do. Most people do, but there are some people.
I'm not the bad millennial.
Right.
I'm not.
Okay. So, as you know, very difficult. You're at home. You played all your board games. Is your family like a board game people?
Yeah. I mean, I'm just obsessed with watching sports now, so that's kind of how I spend my time.
All right. Well, what do you think about murder mysteries?
Ooh, I do love those. I used to play those all the time when I was younger. I want to get back into it. Well,
okay. So Hunt a Killer. I've been doing this off and on over really the past couple of years with my daughter, because she at one point was like obsessed with the SVU, or no, what is it? The Dick Wolf Law and Order.
Yeah.
Not just the SVU, but all of them.
All
the
of them.
Law and
Wow.
Orders.
SVU is the most salacious.
Oh yeah. Well, that's why I tried to get her back off that.
Right.
But so we got Hunt a Killer. It's a murder mystery game that essentially comes to you well, you can speed it up if you want, but it comes once a month in a box. It has piles of documents, evidence, audio recordings that they put on thumb drives, case files. You basically go through the whole thing. It's like that true crime thing, except for you're the detective. And we set up a bulletin board with the tacks and the string.
Oh, my God.
It sort of fell apart after a while. But we had a little bit of that. And but it's fun. It's really fun. It's hard.
Can I just say, I got my second box. Me and my girlfriend are doing this, and I got my second box. We're doing the Cadence Theater one, and it's
the cold case.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, this theater, and we actually ordered our second box early because we were ready to do it after the first one.
That's the Depression era one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Okay. There was a cold case, like there was a cold case from the Depression era.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because, I had the opportunity to go through it with Mila and, I mean, this is not going to be for most people, but like talk about like that era, like to force feed history into my kid.
That's kind of the thing I'd be into.
No, but they do it all different ones. There was also one where it was like people went to a college reunion and, it's like the Big Chill, except for somebody actually got killed. So right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/majority. Use the promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first box. Head to huntakiller.com/majority, 20% off. Show your support for our podcast. That's huntakiller.com/majority. All right. So let's get back into this. One of the things that's happening now with the transition, amongst the things like Donald Trump last Thursday, apparently, calling everybody in saying, can we bomb Iran?
Yeah. Just make a splash on my way out. I mean, into a second Trump term. Maybe he has a heartfelt desire to bomb Iran. And he thinks his legacy would be apparently, when Mike Pompeo and Mike Pence are basically the voices of reason, in any situation, you got a problem, I think. Mm-hmm.
And you can't help but wonder if it's like he's just looking for something like, I just need something that's going to get me one, tiny loan from MBS or something like that. But it appears that they decided to push that off the table. Now, the fact that we've heard about it 4 days later suggests to me that whoever leaked it, because you've got top advisors in the Oval Office with the president, are trying to sort of lock in and make sure that there's enough pushback that we don't bomb Iran right now.
And that's what you have to do with all of these Trump administration stories, although there won't be that many anymore. But it even applies to the Biden team. You have to decipher why this information is being provided to the press and work backward from there. Exactly.
It is very, very rare that you will get a story about what happens on the inside of an administration where it is not because someone involved in it in some fashion has an agenda that they are hoping this story will provide, that disclosure will provide some form of pressure in one way or another, and certain things will happen after that. I mean, it's very contextual, but you're absolutely right. I think,
and it's usually in Politico.
And it's usually in Politico. That becomes a little bit more naked. But in this instance, also what we're seeing, and people have heard about this, the blocking of the Biden transition. Part of it is simply Donald Trump's ego and his desire to build a grievance amongst his followers so that whatever his next project is, he will have that energized base. For Republicans in the Senate, part of that is to build grievance so that they turn out for a Georgian special election. Another part of it, I think, though, is by keeping the Biden transition team way on the outside, it means that the current Trump administration, to be clear, Republican administration, is able to go about getting involved in all sorts of mischief without having to dedicate any of their resources to a transition.
Exactly.
And without providing any transparency for that transition. So one of the things you get is this burrowing. Tell us about this John Ellis guy.
Yeah. So if you guys recall on the show the other day, we talked about John McEntee, who's this 30-year-old former college quarterback famous for trick shots on YouTube, who Trump has, for some reason, pushed up the ranks in his administration. And his sole job right now is to put Trump appointees, political appointees, in basically traditionally civilian positions,
civil service positions,
so that it'll make it a lot harder for Joe Biden and his administration to take out these far right crazies when Biden does finally assume office. And so one of those people is Ellis, who used to his first name is escaping me right now, John Ellis, who used to be the chief of staff for Devin Nunes, chief counsel. And it's not a Senate confirmed role. This guy is far right, was a part of encouraging the Trump administration to put all that Ukrainian malfeasance on secret servers. And so basically what this 30-year-old college quarterback is doing, which is what I like to refer to him as because it's so absurd, is, as has been written about, burrowing these political appointees in civilian positions, providing them with civil service protections.
Exactly.
So that Biden and his ilk cannot get rid of them.
And here is the other scary part of this. This is not, I mean, there's sort of like the Ellis story, placing him at the council in the NSA against the wishes of the head of the NSA. Now, it's conceivable after the fact that if the Biden administration gets in, they can move him to a different civil service position. But this conversion of political appointees to civil service workers in the government take an oath to the Constitution. They take an oath to be bipartisan. Usually these are people who work up through the ranks. They are career bureaucrats in the best sense of the word. They care about their work. They don't care who the president is. They do their job to make the government function. Places like the CDC used to be of this ilk.
Right. Well, I mean, Sally Yates was a good example of someone who kind of rose up and now is more in this political realm, but that was because Trump put her there. But like on a macro level, like Bill Barr is an example of somebody who's completely, I mean, I know he's a political appointment, but all the decisions he's made has politicized the DOJ in the exact way that they're doing on the down low in every other area of the government.
Now, back 3 weeks ago now, this story got buried because of the impending election. Apparently that distracted a lot of people. And there was a Trump appointed head of a key advisory council on the civil service who was himself a longtime civil servant, but had been appointed to this advisory board. He resigned. And he resigned over an executive order that Donald Trump issued. And this is how the Washington Post characterized that order. It was an executive order to redesignate career employees in, quote, confidential policy determining, policy making, and policy advocating positions as falling under rules that primarily apply to political appointees. Such accepted service positions do not require competition in hiring or even public notice that a position is available, do not allow for union representation, do not allow for appeals or of disciplinary action, including firing. Under the order, agencies are to conduct initial review within 3 months and a full review within 7 months of such positions. The OPM would then change their status, affecting both current and future employees. It's uncertain. So the bottom line is, it is looking to replace apolitical experts with political appointees. Mm-hmm. And here's the scary part too. The first deadline of that review happens just before Inauguration Day in January. So there is some speculation. Certainly this longtime Republican, this guy, Ronald Sanders, felt like this was a bad idea, at the very least. You never see people resign from the U.S. government, or to the extent that they do, you never hear about it, because there's this I don't know.
I mean, the big resignation was the official under Barr who resigned after he was trying to instruct them to look into voting cases. I mean, we're seeing the fact that they're looting on their way out, or at least, changing the wiring and the electricity so it shocks you when you turn on a light in the living room, right? Like, that's what they're doing on their way out.
This is what Sanders had to write after he resigned from the Federal Salary Council. The order, and it could affect tens of thousands or more career positions that are involved in making or carrying out policy, quote, is nothing more than a smokescreen for what is clearly an attempt to require the political loyalty of those who advise the president, or failing that, to enable their removal with little, if any, due process. In other words, they want to make it possible to remove a lot of these civil servants and replace them with political appointees. At the very least, what this is going to do is it's going to drain resources from a Biden administration on day one. And it's going to make it difficult for them to actually do anything, because basically it's like, you want to come in and, remodel the house. Well, first you're going to have to fix the plumbing, which we blew up.
Right.
Then you're going to have to fix the wiring, which we all cut. Then you're going to have to fix the sewers because we clogged them. I mean, that's basically what's going on here with the Trump administration. And it's not, the story that we hear traditionally by the media is that this is about Donald Trump's, hurt ego, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
No doubt. But this has been a consistent problem with both the media coverage and, I think, even to a larger extent, the Democrats, because it is very hard to expect the media to go further than the supposed opposition party in pointing this type of stuff out.
Right.
They should. The media should. But, human nature is what it is. And the Democrats, you would imagine, would be the ones who are most vocal about this. And this is an ongoing theme with the Democrats that we saw, where the Democrats do not signal and do not direct people's attention to where the real problem is. This is not about Donald Trump. Donald Trump is not sitting there going like, I want my legacy to be that I was able to get rid of career bureaucrats in our government as I leave.
Right.
That's not what Donald Trump is worried about, his legacy. This is a project by Republican operatives.
Yeah. Well, they're the ones that say that they care so much or they hate government bureaucracy so much. They're literally gumming up the works, the bureaucratic works, in order to make government less functional on a bureaucratic level, because it's going to be so messed up once Biden enters.
Indeed. And these will have long-term implications. I've referred to this in the past, but 4 years ago, right around now, I think it was, we had Sam Bagenstos on, who served in the Department of Justice. He ran for Michigan State Supreme Court, I think it was last year, did not win. But he is a law professor, I think, at the University of Michigan. He was in the Justice Department under the Clinton administration, and then came back and was in the Justice Department under the Obama administration. So he saw what happened to the Department of Justice in 8 years without these type of shenanigans. And he said it took 2 years or 3 years just to be able to attract personnel back into these departments, because all the people who genuinely cared about this stuff were basically given a message over the course of 8 years, like, you have no place here. And so Democrats really need to point this stuff out. It is not just about Donald Trump doesn't want to leave because he doesn't want to acknowledge a transition because of his hurt feelings. There's a lot of stuff going on in the executive branch right now. There's a story about the Arctic Reserve, and this is just nuts. This was in the Washington Post, I think it was today, or the New York Times, Washington Post. The Trump administration is asking oil and gas firms to pick spots where they want to drill in Alaska's Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. And they want them to do it now so they can auction them off before Biden gets in. There's a call for nominations. It is being published today in the Federal Register. There is, it's basically saying identify where you want to bid on about 1.6 million acres of coastal plain. This is a sale that the Interior Department wants to essentially an auction to have
it's
before
a fire
Biden
sale.
It's a fire sale.
And then while setting the planet on fire as well, coincidentally.
Well, here's the unbelievable thing about it. The Post writes, it's unclear how much appetite there is in the oil and gas industry for drilling in the refuge. Given the lack of infrastructure there, the public backlash that a company that could come forward. And basically, look, everyone knows that oil and gas is not a business for the future. The question is just like, what's the timeline? It's conceivable, though, you may have smaller companies come in, bid on this stuff just as a way of selling it back to the U.S.
Yeah.
Because claiming that they're going to go in there. The government also plans to auction off oil and gas rights to more than 383,000 acres of federal land in the lower 48 states in the next 2 months. I mean, this is a huge giveaway of all of our property, of the commons. The Energy Department is looking to weaken energy efficiency requirements for shower heads.
Well, I mean, it dovetails with the light bulb thing that Trump did. What was that, 2017, really early on?
But this was the light bulb thing. I can tell you this right now. During the Obama years, there were 4 or 5 years of constant pounding about the light bulb requirements.
And it actually was effective in terms of reducing our output.
It was incredibly effective in terms of reducing the output. And the other thing that happens when you have companies are required to do these type of efficiencies, you get better products.
Right. Well, for the viewers who didn't know, like back in, I think maybe it was 2017, Trump undid all of Obama's light bulb efficiency requirements, which were actually very effective in reducing our carbon footprint just immediately. It was a part of everything he undid as soon as he got in. Just boom, boom, boom.
In that instance, the light bulb companies were like, well, we're not going to switch back because we have no reason to. We are making more efficient light bulbs. They're actually better. We now have like the ability to like change their color. Like we have smart bulbs, the LED technology that they developed in a expedited fashion because of these requirements. We saw it also with the CAFE standards that he tried to reverse. And California was like, well, we're not going to do it.
Yeah.
And the car companies were like, we don't want you to do it because we actually feel more comfortable knowing that 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, we need to make far more efficient cars.
So it's not just an ungoverning. It's not just a deregulating. It's also a looting, which I feel like sometimes the media misses, right? Like it's not just getting rid of regulations to be this old school kind of conservative who says, yeah, libertarian, let the builders build, do whatever the hell they want, whatever, right? Like it's also so his friends and him can get rich quick, really quick, before it all dries up.
Absolutely. And we're also seeing things like the administration pressing ahead with other moves to expand energy development and scale back federal environmental rules. It aims to finalize a plan to open up a vast majority of the National Petroleum Reserve Alaska drilling to adopt a narrower definition of what constitutes a critical habitat for endangered species. And when companies are liable for killing migratory birds. I mean, they're going on a spree here. And Democrats need to call this stuff out because we get reporting like this, but it's not going to, this is not a headline story for people, but it is important for Democrats. When we talk about why they lost down ballot, right? It is because And Joe Biden, I think, ran the perfect, frankly, Joe Biden campaign.
Right.
And that was, I don't necessarily have a whole lot of a vision to offer. I don't necessarily. I mean, he has some good proposals, some that are not so great, but it's pretty banal stuff.
But vision is different than,
yes.
Policy, throw this in the wall, whatever.
He was offering people a choice. This is a referendum. Do you want Donald Trump or not? I am a non-offensive, not me personally, but Joe Biden is saying I'm a non-offensive replacement for Donald Trump. And, I'm sure there were people who were like, I've always been a Joe Biden fan. For years, I followed all his work when he, put the bankruptcy bill and wouldn't let people discharge their obligations in a way a corporation could. I mean, there could be people out there who are like that. Like, I really appreciated the fact that he always had the credit card company's backs.
Yeah,
that's the thing I like
it's
about
more
it.
just cultural.
But,
always BFFs with Obama, always kind of folksy. Oh, he wears aviators.
Right. I mean, the point is that Joe Biden was presenting himself as a non-offensive replacement for someone that everybody was, or at least 77 million people were offended by. Mm-hmm. The problem is that down ballot, that doesn't work because I don't need, like I did in 2018, to vote for the Democrat to send a message to Donald Trump that I don't like him, because I can vote against Donald Trump. The Democrats did nothing to tie Donald Trump to the Republicans. In fact,
did the opposite.
They did the opposite. Joe Biden was out there saying, hey, I want Democrats. Go ahead, vote for Democrat. I want Republicans. We need Republicans. Nancy Pelosi said this as well. And I'm sorry. I get the sentiment. We should have some tension within but that's not the job of Democrats to say that you should go out and support Republicans. We played a clip of Chris Coons the other day where he was asked by a news anchor, after he had said Republicans refused to accept the end of this election. What are they saying in private? Well, in private, they're wishing Joe Biden good luck, and they're saying he's president. I mean, it's basically laying the Republicans off the hook. Here is Dick Durbin doing the exact same thing. This is the Democratic whip. And he is once again understand there's a reason why Mitch McConnell is not criticizing Donald Trump for not accepting the election results. And that's because he's trying to motivate Republican voters in Georgia. There's a reason why Loeffler and Perdue are attacking a Republican Secretary of State in Georgia. There's a reason why Lindsey Graham is out trying to get that Republican Secretary of State to change votes.
States' rights, right? Even though he's a senator from South Carolina, you got to weigh in on Georgia's Secretary of State and their electoral process.
They are trying to draw attention to what's going on in Georgia, and they are trying to demonize anybody who made it possible for Joe Biden to win the election by not throwing it to Donald Trump. That's what they're doing. That's the kind of hardball they're playing. And here's Dick Durbin going out, and I don't know if you could come out with a more contrary message than if you're a Democrat, you need to go and vote, and you're in Georgia, you need to get people to vote. If you know people in Georgia, you need to get them to vote for Warnock or Ossoff. Here's Dick Durbin. This is him on Saturday. I mean, it's nuts.
Point comfortable with eliminating the filibuster?
Listen, I live in the world of Senate rules more than most, and I understand how they can be used effectively and how they can just be a roadblock to anything happening. Here's the good news. In conversations I've had since November 3rd with Republican senators, we sat down and got very honest and very candid on a personal basis, and they are frustrated. They want the Senate to do things. I believe that's where the potential is for the future. That with Republicans who are ready for the Senate to be active and engaged and finding compromises and moving forward, the Senate rules won't hold us back.
So don't end the filibuster? You wouldn't support it right now? Because, Senator Manchin calls it BS.
Yes. Well, I can tell you at this point, there are a lot of factors involved. At this point, what I want to focus on is first, winning Georgia. Second, finding bipartisan solutions. And third, letting Joe Biden use the presidency to put America back on its feet, to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic.
How will he do that?
And to get this economy back to work.
Okay.
How will he do that?
Well, let's just start with what he wanted to focus on.
Okay, cool.
That is, number one, winning Georgia. Is there anybody in earshot of me can explain how going on national television and saying in private, now none of them is saying this publicly. What they're saying publicly right now is that the election was stolen in Georgia for Donald Trump. But in private, what they're saying is that we can get along and that we can strike bipartisan.
So there's no real
solutions.
consequences for Georgia.
So there's no real consequences. It's not that important because in private they're actually. I mean, this is not an ideological argument, folks. I mean, at least within the context of the Democratic Party. I mean, there's a little bit of an ideological fight in the Democratic Party, but this is just simply about like basic messaging. If you're telling us that you're focused on Georgia, why? Why is Georgia important? Why do we need a Democratic majority in Georgia? Why do we need those things to get a Democratic majority in the Senate? I mean, if they're telling you in secret and you believe them, the Republicans are saying, like, we're going to be able to work together. We really want to do something. Then why do we need a Democratic majority?
Yeah.
You've just given up your number one talking point as to win that election right as you're saying it's my number one priority.
One side says election stolen, right?
Fake president.
How
president
angry are you about that? How angry are you that the election was stolen from the candidate that you liked who almost won that state? Wow, those supporters might be really pissed off, right? Can you imagine if there was a similar situation after the end of 2016, right? Like, I don't know. I mean, for the Democrats, you can't because they wouldn't fight. But the other side is saying, oh, there's no consequences. Don't even worry about it. Because Republicans are actually really good people behind the scenes. It was Trump that was always the problem.
I mean, I don't understand. Like, I understand. Like, I'm not suggesting that Dick Durbin go out there and say that, Republicans are all horrible human beings and whatnot. But like, why do you need to offer up? First off, I could say, like, why would you believe them? Why, like, can you point to any?
True.
Like, Mitch McConnell has time and time again pulling the rug out from under the Democratic Party, whether it was, threatening Barack Obama for releasing the fact that there was Russian interference in the run up to the election, whether it was just, in Obama's own memoir where McConnell's like, they're coming to McConnell like, we need to get this done. Like, why would you think I care about that? Like, but even if you did believe them, why would you give them the out? Like, make them say it. There's a reason why the Republicans will not say that publicly, because they know it's going to hurt them politically. It's going to hurt their chances of winning in Georgia. It's going to hurt them politically. Why do Democrats refuse to engage in politics? This is what politics are. There is no reason for you to go on and give your opinion on CNN or MSNBC or ABC or Fox or wherever it is. This show, we don't need to hear your opinion about maybe if you want to communicate with the American public, it should be for two things. It should be to explain policies, or it should be to win political power so you can implement those policies that you can go on television and explain about.
Well, what about if you want to do a masturbatory exercise and feel really good about yourself and go on cable news?
I don't even think that's what's going on with Durbin. I just think that they are not. I just think that
sometimes that's the Democrats.
Yes.
That's more Manchin, but yeah, it's this fetishization of this senatorial, all of us 100 folks working together and blah, 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 which the Republicans never engage in, and they win disproportionately. So maybe make your case.
Make your case. If you're telling, don't tell the CNN host or the MSNBC host or whoever it is that your number one priority is winning in Georgia. Show it. Do it.
Yeah.
Perform that priority. Don't tell us, because you could tell us that the number one priority is Georgia, and then you go on and completely undercut that priority. I mean, we see this time and time and time again. We saw it, and this is what brings us to this fight that's happening. And I don't know how successful or possible it is that we may see a new minority leader in the House. My guess it would be unlikely, particularly since it is less consequential, because there's no opportunity to pass anything unless the Democrats take the Senate. And even then, it's mostly reconciliation stuff. You're not going to have a broad opportunity. But, yesterday on this program, the second half of our program, we had a little bit of a debate. It wasn't necessarily with somebody who's, he's not even a Democrat. He's an independent who is worried about, he says, for the Democratic Party because of their infighting. He seemed to be mostly worried about the infighting as it related to
defund the police.
Well, as it related to like AOC and Bernie Sanders for whatever reason,
right?
As if Bernie Sanders is involved in the House leadership fight. He's not. He's a senator, and he's actually in the Democratic leadership of the Senate, even though he is. I think he's still registered as an independent.
He is, and who cares? It's just it's like a weird, Northeast thing,
right?
Like,
but this independent who came on the show was saying that AOC didn't. I don't know. She was not a good Democrat. This guy's not even a Democrat himself. But the interesting thing is that my argument has been and continues to be, and I think AOC has said something like this, and Doug Jones, who is not a Democratic socialist, he is not from the Bronx or Queens or North Brooklyn. He is from Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
And Doug Jones, he said that the Democrats have a problem, and that is that they focus, when they do campaigns, they focus on the candidate. They don't focus on the district. And that is indicative of an apparatus that is not oriented towards building power on the ground.
Well, if Beyonce does another video for these candidates, maybe it'll put them over the top. It's counterintuitive if you're the party that's trying to advocate for more worker-friendly policies, I guess marginally, right? Why are you not talking to people and regular folks in the area and allowing to cede that ground to Republicans? I mean, and it's been a constant problem for over 10 years at this point, for even longer than that, right? There's no apparatus that encourages shoe leather politics, right? That's right. Correct.
Well, yes, and there was, and Howard Dean, when he was in charge of the DNC in the run up to the 2008 election, had instituted and not fully executed it, but it certainly was growing. It was a 50-state strategy.
Yep.
Investing in state parties and helping them build an infrastructure, not in a run up to an election, but when there is no election, like build a presence that exists outside of a campaign apparatus. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to tell you who the latest person is to question the Democratic leadership in the House. And here's a clue. It is not a member of the squad. So the person who this story came out, and I was a little bit upset too, because the person that we had that debate with yesterday, I had sent this to him and I was like, we could do round 2 on this. Because supposedly it was about Democratic infighting, but it turns out it probably was not about Democratic infighting. It was somebody trying to push a certain side in an ideological fight within the Democratic Party, which to me is distinct from the question of Democrats just performing politics. And Representative Elisa Slotkin, she is one of those sort of like high profile Democrats, from Michigan that you hear people talking about. Could be like, the future of the moderates in the party.
Well, yeah. Right? I mean, she's a former CIA,
indeed,
DOD, military industrial complex folk.
And sort of like the ilk from Abigail Spanberger in some respects, right?
Yeah. I'd love to hang out with them. Being sarcastic.
Well, she said that she came out and said she won't support Nancy Pelosi's bid to serve Speaker again. And she says, I will not be voting for Nancy Pelosi. She told Politico, this is a report that came from Friday. I have no idea if people are going to run against her or who might run against her. And I will, of course, have this conversation directly with her, but I believe we need new leadership. I'd love to see more Midwesterners, because if you look across the leadership, I respect these people, but it's New York and California. I mean, I think there's something to be said about that.
Totally.
From a geographic standpoint.
Well, the reason they're there is because they have the largest fundraising networks. I mean, that's why Hakeem Jeffries is being floated to potentially replace Pelosi. It's why he's in leadership now. It's why Chuck Schumer's in leadership. They don't get it based on political acumen. They get it based on fundraising prowess.
AOC, of course, is I think the number 3 fundraiser.
Yeah,
in the
she does it without compromising her integrity.
And here's what she said. There's absolutely no accountability from the speaker. We should have won big, but, you know, the defund the police issue, the Green New Deal, those issues killed our members. Now, there's absolutely zero data to that effect. And first of all, like, tell Ed Markey that Green New Deal is a problem. Now, maybe it wasn't a problem in Massachusetts, but the point being, the idea that the Green New Deal was not a problem in 2018 at all, but is a problem in 2020 is absurd.
In fact, it polls pretty well. And but Republicans are never held to account for not dismissing the members of their caucus that are QAnon believers.
Right. Of course. Like, I mean, why wasn't the QAnon
cost Trump the election?
Why didn't QAnon or Trump hurt Republican? This is the issue.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way for Nancy Pelosi to keep Fox News viewers or Mark Levin listeners or own watchers from believing that Democrats are, coming for your hamburgers, that they're part of a satanic pedophile cult or any of this stuff. She can't prevent that. But what Democrats can do is make Republicans own the stuff. Not that, like, you don't want to make them own the Proud Boys who are out there, talking about white people will rise up again in certain situations. And
but they partly did make them own white supremacy with Charlottesville in 2018, and it was effective.
Indeed. If you only held Donald Trump to account for that.
Right.
Not Republicans. Make the Republicans own their liabilities. There was no attempt to do that. Their biggest liability was Donald Trump. Did not let the Republicans own that. We heard from the top of the ticket on down, once Donald Trump is gone, these guys, the fever will break again. We've heard that from Democratic leaders all through the Obama administration, where we lost 1,000 down ballot seats over the course of those 8 years, a lot of them in 2010. This is a problem with the Democrats. You can talk about the liabilities that are held against you because there are people in the streets calling for social justice. What are you doing to make your opponents own their liabilities? The answer is nothing. You did not hold them to account. Pelosi made every subpoena go through her office. You didn't allow even your committee chairs to have oversight hearings. This is a real problem with the Democratic Party. And it's not a question of ideology. It is a question of merely performing politics, which is more and more essential because they're running away with it. They have a lot more of an infrastructure. They have a lot more of tools in this. Democrats need to get serious about this. We will talk about this more in the coming days. Don't forget, you can watch us on the Peacock app, on the Choice channel. Check us out. We rerun again at 5 p.m., 10 p.m., and through the night. And if you're still with us, we're going to head into the fun half. We got more to talk about. We did a lot of news today. We didn't even get into Joe Biden threatening not to hold Donald Trump accountable.
Well, I mean, I don't even think it's a threat. I think it's a promise. He's a Nazi, but we're not going to do anything about it. Or he's a criminal. We all know he's a criminal. Ay. I mean, were we anticipating anything different after the Obama years where the same thing happened? Bush committed war crimes, and there was...
She made a big issue about turn the page. All right, well, we're going to take a break.
I mean, the right thing to do would be to say, we're going to turn the page, and then have people who, in the Justice Department, who don't turn the page and actually, like, go back over the page and say, oh, well, we wanted to turn the page, but we couldn't. But I somehow don't think that's the plan.
I know it. It's nuts. It is. I like to think that he's just saying this, now and that, but I don't think that's the case. I think they generally don't want to hold them to account. And part of it, look, I can take we'll talk more about this late in the fun half, but I can take a cynical view of it, and I can take a less cynical view of it. The most cynical view of it is they don't want to dig into this stuff because they don't want to have to be held to that standard as well.
Yep. But the less cynical one is that they genuinely don't want to cause more division in the country. And it can be both.
I think that is a fool's errand, though. Of course, that doesn't happen. And the less cynical is that they're bad at politics and they do not hold people to account. And so you had Barack Obama, so many things that were problematic, like just even, let's say, like Guantanamo.
Or Wall Street. Wall Street would be less egregious than prosecuting, say, like Trump or Bush himself, right? Like, which I understand their argument more there as opposed to like literal criminals who crashed the economy.
But when you contemplate how hard it was, and I do think it was genuinely hard for Barack Obama to meet his promise in terms of Guantanamo, in terms of closing Guantanamo. Part of that was because the Democratic senators got really scared too. Mm-hmm. If you do not hold these people to account, not only do you increase the likelihood that they will repeat this, right? I mean, savings and loan crisis in '87 brings you the banking problem. Iran-Contra or Watergate brings you Iran-Contra, brings you the Iraq War. I mean, it just goes on and on and on like this. And if you don't hold people to account, regardless of what institution it is, you are going to get the same problem again. And as a political matter, the problems you have, they're going to be divorced from context because who everybody relies on, right? Like you rely on the opposition party to point out the failings of the party they are opposed to. And if they don't do it, it doesn't matter if we sit here and talk about it. It doesn't matter if, some third party says it, because the fact that the opposing party is not saying anything mitigates anything you say.
Yep.
Because if it was really bad, wouldn't they do something about it? I mean, that was the one benefit of, and it was too narrow and whatnot, but it was the one benefit of impeachment and that's why you saw like people's, opinion of impeachment went up, or support for impeachment went up when the Democrats said we've got to impeach, because it indicates to people that, oh, wait, this is serious.
Wait, there's a legitimacy behind it as opposed to just talking heads,
Yes.
talking about it.
You've got to show, not tell.
Exercise your power. Right, exactly. Well, I mean, that's when we're talking about political rhetoric from the Democrats. I mean, it's the same thing when we were talking about Elise Slotkin, right? So, there can be unity around strategy of holding Republicans accountable across ideological spectrums. I mean, she's as conservative of a Democrat as it gets. But there can be, okay, we're going to actually hammer them on this, and then we can have our intra-caucus discussions about defund the police.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like, even if AOC came out and said, like, I believe we should fund the police, and I believe in a Brown New Deal. You know what I mean? Even if she came out and said this, and every single Democrat, the question remains, what are you doing to get a political, like, what is your political advantage over the Republicans? Like, where are you exercising? They're not. And that's really frustrating. This is all fun half stuff. I can't believe we're giving away this stuff for free.
Yeah, I know.
Folks, if you want to become a member of the program and hear more of this, then go to jointhemajorityreport.com. right now and become a member. It is your support that makes the free show possible. And then we give you extra content. We'll take your phone calls, take your IMs. Also, don't forget amquickie.com. Check out the AM Quickie. 7 minutes of headline news in your, well, not in your email box, but maybe we should institute something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But you can find it on your podcast server. And of course, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code, get 10% off. Get the Majority Report blend. Have you ever had that, Emma?
Not yet.
I find that hard to believe, but okay. Also, don't forget Hunt a Killer. It's a murder mystery subscription box where you sift through piles of documents, evidence, audio recordings, and more, eliminating suspects and identifying murder weapons until you crack the case and catch the killer. Hunt to Killer has over 2,000 5-star reviews. It's no wonder why people love them so much. Go to hunttokiller.com/majority. Use the promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first box. You will have fun just like new Matt. Don't forget, check out Nomi's show. Is she going to be with us? Is Nomi? Do we have her?
Yep, here she comes.
Okay. Nomi's show comes right on right after ours. Here she is. Nomi.
Hi.
Hi. What's going on with that?
What's with what?
No. We heard a buzz. That's your new backdrop. I like it.
Oh, wow.
For now. Just going to change it up. But you know what's happening right now is next door someone's doing construction. So I'm just going to mute myself when I'm not talking.
All right. Well, who's going to be on your show today, aside from some guys doing construction?
Yeah, they're going to be on all day. It's so exciting. A special guest appearance. We are going to be talking about Bolivia, just like
on your mic. Are you guys getting that, or is that just me?
Yeah? But I think that's the way Zoom tries to cancel out those noises. I think.
Oh, wait, I don't understand though, because
is there noise going on right now, Nomi?
No, there's no noise.
Well, there's some electronic feedback with your mic.
Uh-oh. How is it now?
Now you sound better.
Okay, I just turned off my phone. Maybe it was that. These are the moments that everybody's been waiting for. We're going to be talking about Bolivia pretty much for the majority of the show, just because we haven't dedicated a lot of the show to international stuff. So now that the election's sort of over, we're delving in. Chris Halali is going to be on. Napoleon de Legend's going to be on to talk about it afterwards. And just a brief little synopsis of all the things Trump is doing in the final 2 months, just checking them off the list, like, drilling in the Arctic, selling property in Alaska, finding a new NSA chair, whatever. It's the list goes on and on. That's our exciting show today, guys. So go there, youtube.com/The Nomi Key Show.
There you go, folks. Also, don't forget the Antifada. You can find it at patreon.com/the Antifada. Matt, what's happening on TMBS tonight?
Paul O'Connell joins us. David actually talked to him this afternoon about what's going on with labor and the Corbyn split. Maybe a messy break going on in the Labor Party. We're going to talk about that. So tonight, patreon.com/TMBS and the Michael Brooks Show on YouTube.
All right. And lastly, I got a special announcement. It's Brendan Finn's birthday. He turns, who are you now, Brendan? 18? Turn 18.
Yeah, 18. That's right. Still the youngest person on the show.
There you go. He's now 18 years old, and he's allowed to vote. So there you go.
That's true. I will give my shout out because I've been seeing a little chatter online. Friend of the show, caller Jeff from Georgia is in the hospital now, and I think he's doing better. And I just wanted to say, get well soon.
Yep. We saw a report that he's doing well. People can check him out on Georgia. Send you best wishes. All right. See you in the fun half. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous. You're a little bit upset. You're riled up.
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance.
Ooh.
my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're not paying.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
Do.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
we're back. It's the fun half. Joining us on the fun half today, Nomi and Emma. Let me read some IMs, and then we've got a lot to talk about, guys. Not the least. I have a question for you that we're going to get to in a little bit. It's that NGP van. I don't know if you read that, but I want to ask you about that. But I want to read some of these IMs first. Ebwinara, when they go low, we apologize for ever allowing ourselves to think they could go low.
That's really good.
Joyce from PA, like Emma's co-host, you work well together. Thank you. Left-wing Limbaugh, Green New Deal is the reason Dems lost, they say, yet Joe Biden put forth a $2 trillion climate initiative. How does the party reconcile that? IS, the problem with the leadership outside of the big coastal cities, they're easier to primary. Think Tom Daschle and Eric Cantor happened much more frequently than the Joe Crowleys until recently. Yes, but I have a feeling that's going to reverse itself within the Democratic Party, to be honest with you, because I think people figured out it's easier to do it in a blue district. Wildcard 26, you know, I'm a paying member of this show. I agree with most of the ideas, but all this shit talking about military people and vets is starting to piss me off. Just because I'm a vet does not mean I agree with the military industrial complex and the government it preys on. You people need to start seeing these as two separate issues. I believe that there was some of the point from the Iraq vet you had on yesterday. There are a lot of vets with progressive views out there, but you're alienating us. First off, I will tell you that I know there's a lot of vets with progressive views. Bernie Sanders got more donations from vets than any other candidate running in that primary. But I'm sorry, I don't even recall discussing vets at all yesterday or in any disparaging way in the past.
Well, I mean, I think that the guest was trying to conflate the two when I don't think, I mean, maybe that was, you know, after we were talking about Elise Slotkin and I talked about how she was a part of the CIA and DOD, but I don't know if that was even as a military service member and more as a bureaucrat.
I'm very surprised at that comment, actually, because I don't think that I think you're completely mischaracterizing it.
Is he talking about Paul? Like that you weren't nicer to what Paul had to say about vets? Is that?
Well, was Paul even talking about vets?
Paul like included vets at one point in his, like the people who are left out by the Democratic Party.
I just don't think that's the case. In fact, I mean, what was that? One of the things that we heard in one of the lawsuits in like Pennsylvania was one of the poll watchers was like, saw a lot of military ballots came in and they all said Biden. I thought that was really suspicious.
Well, yeah. I mean, also, but speaking of leftist support for veterans, I mean, Bernie's time as head of Veterans Affairs in the Senate was immensely
I was
prosperous.
Surprised that Paul didn't give him credit for that, because a lot of vets appreciated the work that Bernie did with
fought
McCain,
tooth and nail,
right?
Yeah, but I mean, McCain wanted cuts and he secured a little bit more.
I mean, I am a little bit skeptical of some of the things that you as a as an IMer writing, and frankly, what Paul had to say. But follow up from the data from yesterday. This is from calling from a 509 area code. Of the 10 House Dems who lost, I took your suggestion and compared them instead essentially to Dems from districts with similar Cook partisan voter index. 6 of the 10 who lost were more conservative than the median House Dem in an equivalent district. So it seems to be basically a push, but definitely doesn't support Rykoff's claim. Good call on looking at the data compared to the PVI, though. Oh, thank you. Let's see. What else we got here? All right. Well, we'll get to more IMs in a bit. Paul's bots are coming at you just as he promised. A wild card 2-6. I'm aware of what Bernie Sanders has done for vets. Well, I just don't know what you. Here we go. Your view and comments here do not bear a distinction. I don't quite get that. The MCI and vets are not the same thing, right? But we're not.
We're not saying that.
We're not saying. We're just trying to figure out what you're referring to. I just, we don't understand what you're talking about. Barrett Home too. Why is Tim Pool doing a Zoom call with Ben Shapiro, not you? That's a good question. And Nomi Lockin Key says, I think you underestimate the popularity of Jimmy Dore and Tim Pool. They're very easy to digest for young people. I know they're very popular at my college. No, on the contrary. The reason why I attack them is because I know they're very popular. If I thought that nobody was watching them, I wouldn't bother.
Right, exactly.
That's what's problematic about them. I don't mind. Listen, if Jimmy was just saying what he's saying, and he was just doing it literally in his apartment or in his stand-up shows,
berating someone new,
I mean, that would be fine.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't waste my time on it. But it is because I know that they're influencing young people at colleges that I do go after.
I feel like Jimmy's trending downward, but Tim Pool is gaining popularity right now.
Yes, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Primaries are over.
Yeah. Well, let's see. Yeah. So hopefully, Jimmy doesn't demobilize voters going into the next cycle.
Right.
Oh, he will.
He'll try. He'll
try his best. Yeah.
All right. So, Nomi, let's get into this a little bit.
Okay.
Well, I was reading a post. One of the things that we talk about a lot with Nomi because of her background. Obviously, that she was on the Unity Commission.
Emma covered it. We had a whole thing going on.
I got to go to Vegas. I won some money. Fun times.
Oh, we should talk about that because I could use some help on some of the gambling stuff.
Wow.
But so one of the things that has been my hobby horse for the past couple of days, and frankly, it's been my hobby horse. In the lead up to the 2016 election, we know that the Clinton campaign laid off Paul Ryan. We know that the Democrats, I think, they practice a malpractice politically at times, I think, in terms of holding Republicans to account. But then there's also this other issue that is less about messaging and rhetoric and positioning and the way you offer legislation to there is literally just sort of I don't know, what we would call it in baseball, catching, throwing, bunting, base running, just the mechanics of the game that everybody should have as a baseline if you're going to go out on the field. And one of the things, AOC was talking about failure to do digital advertising, particularly during a pandemic. There were reports that, particularly in the African-American community, the Trump campaigns were pouring money into Facebook, and it was unmatched because Democratic candidate, the Democratic apparatus was not adept enough at picking this up. And then I just read a Howie Klein post at Downward.
I read that too. Yep.
And Howie is I would say, I think ideologically he's in the left of the party, but his main focus for at least a decade and a half has been on partisanship by Democrats and best practices, period. That has been his laser focus.
And he's been at the forefront of like when nobody would talk about the DCCC or Emily's List or the money or the consultants, he was the lone voice.
Exactly. I mean, he's been on this beat for a long time, talking about just sort of like the mechanics, stuff that we don't see. And unless you're a candidate or you're working on campaign. And one of the things that you've talked about is this whole sort of like consultant class where they, you know, I put money in your right pocket, you put money in my left pocket type of situation.
And if we win, it's just a fun surprise. It's
exactly
sprinkles on top of the sundae.
The game is not going to go away. Sometimes we win, sometimes we lose, but we get paid for playing the game.
Yeah, that's what matters.
All right.
And controversy too, when you're actually like the perfect example is Amy McGrath. No one should have been putting money in that race. They knew they were going to lose. But, when you're going up against a nemesis, a big bad guy, a lot of money there.
All right. So tell us about what is NBC, the van? Like
NGP van.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I've heard about this for years. Yeah. And I go and look it up and I figure out what it is. And then I immediately forget. And so will you please explain to me again what this is?
I don't know if I should, if I'm the best person to do this, but it's a tool. First thing, they used to be two separate things and they merged. It's a monopoly essentially in the Democratic Party. I'm going to give you very basic because it's not worth explaining how field works, but it's a tool that if you're doing field in a campaign, it helps you assess voter files and voter data so that you're targeting properly, because campaigns are all about targeting specific. It's very, very nuanced. I mean, we can use big terms frankly, the reason why sometimes Facebook digital is not invested in as much is because it's actually not the most effective way to reach voters. It's good. It's icing on top, like you say, but these are the tools that your field strategy, which is very important if you're running a left-wing challenger campaign, especially at the congressional level, these tools assess the voter files that can be provided to are supposed to be equal access. The Democratic Party is supposed to offer them to everybody who's running on the Democratic line.
To be clear, voter files are provided by Secretary of States. The parties collect them. They're public records.
By the Democratic Party.
By the Democratic Party. And they're public records though, right? And the parties collect them and then they put them into one big database. And then there's a software company that basically provides you the opportunity to assess this voter database in a bunch of different ways. Who voted, let me pull up who voted for Barack Obama but didn't vote in 2012. Who voted in 2008, didn't vote in 2012, or who voted for Barack Obama but then switched their registration, or
right. And let's make that clear. They don't actually know who voted for whom, but based on your registration status, because sometimes when we talk about these things, people go, how do they know who I voted for? They don't. They know that you're a Democrat and you showed up in 2008, probably voted for Barack Obama, and you're a consistent Democrat, which means you're more likely to vote for so-and-so person.
You get those texts, for example, is that the how to access your information?
No, that's usually, depends on what it's for. That's usually just from lists. You can access fundraising lists and you can access phone numbers, signups.
There are people I know who just voted, for the first time, never donated, and they still got texts from the Democratic Party because they registered as a Democrat. I'm just, that's.
Or they signed up, most likely what they did was they probably signed up for an email from a candidate they liked. And then that list was accumulated by somebody else.
Now, is NGP van, they have that voter file so that you get a sense of I'm in this district. How many Democrats are there? What is their propensity to vote? This cohort right here, there's a 90% chance that they're going to vote for me based upon their past behavior. These are algorithms that we've, established. Sometimes they change a little bit, if we find our voter files are way off. Do they also have things like, this cohort has voted for a Democrat for 4 elections in a row, or they've shown up and voted 4 elections in a row, and they also subscribe to Mother Jones magazine. Do they have that kind of data, or do they cross-reference that?
I don't think so. I think that's more what a company you would work with would assess, because they've it's like a Cambridge Analytica kind of thing. That's NGP van is, so you've got the voter file and then the actual tool that field uses van, and you can have mobile van, and there's different different levels you can have, where you assess it. And then what happens is you put your field team inputs information. So if you're going door to door and you're asking, like, you have 5 questions you want to ask if you're just doing field work, it'll be input. Like I said, it can get really complicated and nuanced, but yeah.
But I went door to door in my hometown for Bernie Sanders, and we just asked basically, like, hopefully you're planning to vote for Bernie Sanders. I can't remember exactly what the thing was, but we could theoretically have also gone out there and said, like, who are you interested in down ticket? I would plug that into the app.
Correct.
That information is in there, and so that in the next campaign, I get this information because I'm running for Congress in Worcester. I'm not really, but I'm saying if I was politically, right. And like, I know that in near Lincoln Street, there's a bunch of voters who were for Bernie Sanders and for Jim McGovern, and so, like, that could be those could be my people, that type of thing, right? That's basically
and if anybody who's ever done field before, knocked on doors and worked for an organization, a candidate, you're sent with, like, maybe walking sheets or packets. That's how I used to do it in the old days. But now they've got it. You can just do it directly through this app, and you might be asked to go to, especially in the final days, to most likely voters, to remind them to vote. If it's like a few weeks before, you might be going to voters that are more likely to vote but don't always turn out, and then you say, like, hey, how likely are you to vote for Bernie Sanders? And they'll say, very likely. How likely are you to vote for Elizabeth Warren? Somewhat likely. And so you have to put that in there to get a scale, so you can determine who your target voters are. And that's why you're often hitting these people, and that's why you'll get text messages multiple times, emails, phone calls, hits on the door, because it's all about voter contact. The more voter contact you have, the more likely that voter is going to hopefully vote for you, if your data is correct. Okay. And so that's the value of this, is the data.
All right. So, and Howie Klein is basically saying, like, this is an outdated piece of software that they're just flogging, and they're taking money, they're draining resources, and they're doing it so inefficiently that Republicans can do 3 times the work that Democrats can, spending 3 times less the money to achieve the same essentially results, narrowly tailored in voter contact and efficient contact, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and the problem with this tool is that it is a monopoly. I mean, you as a Democratic voter, a candidate, challenger or not, that it's extremely expensive. Like, a lot of campaigns don't even get it until, maybe 3 or 4 months before, because they can't afford it, because it's, tens of thousands of dollars. But if you're an establishment campaign and you're backed by the establishment, you have more money, you can spend that money earlier. And this is why I always say progressive leaders, progressive organizations, if you really want to affect these campaigns, support them earlier so that they can have these tools, not in the final days of their campaign. They need it earlier so they can do more field work. But in some states, the Democratic Party will not, like Illinois, one of our matriarch candidates, Rachel Ventura, who Howie Klein mentions in this piece, the Democratic Party in Illinois refused to give her access to the data. And as a result, she wasn't able to use this the voter file, which is against the rules.
And so, so what's the solution to this? I mean,
there are other tools, like Target Smart's another tool. There are, like, some competitors. I think that there's some folks trying to come up with technology to counter NGP ban.
Are they just a vendor, or do they have relationships with the Democratic Party? Do they have some type of special relationship that allows them an inside track?
Both. They're a monopoly. So there's no other option. I mean, if you're running at the city level, for instance, you'll probably use Target Smart instead of NGP ban, because it's just too expensive, and it's not. I mean, I don't want to speak on behalf of other candidates, but we didn't.
How did this monopoly begin? Like, what do you have any sense of what the relationships were within the Democratic Party? I don't know if this is DNC or DCCC or both. Like, how did they cement themselves this strongly?
Great question. I don't know the story, or if I forgot it. But it's like there's when we say the consulting class, I mean, there was that whole thing where I said, oh, there's like 5 consultants who made all the, money in the Hillary Clinton campaign. It starts with that. I mean, you look at what happened in Iowa, for instance, with, what's the name of the company that did all the data? No experience in this space whatsoever. And that woman who ran that moved on to another role in the Biden campaign, like no big deal. So I think what had happened, I'm not the person to ask about how it started, but since I've been old enough since I've been doing field work, 2006, it's been around. But it wasn't merged then. It merged, I think, in the Obama years, if I'm correct.
My sense of this is that like everything that is wrong with corporate culture on some level, this is what it's about. It's not, it's just, there is, and on some level, the reason why I think Democrats suffer more from it is because the money is more consolidated. It feels like you don't have like the Koch brothers to come in and say like, we're just going to do we have $1 billion. So we're just going to do a rival. We're going to create a rival party. And so,
right. They go to folks. I think what also happens with the Democrats is the Koch brothers. I mean, I don't know if the Koch brothers came up with this strategy on their own, 35 years ago, but they have their people. We are so addicted to cycles, not to the long term. It's like there's a new super PAC this year. And now the people who are running that super PAC, very similar to the old super PAC people, are going to go to donors that they know. And the donors get a presentation. Oftentimes they're in Hollywood or in Silicon Valley. And then it's very like short term. Ultimately,
you totally know what voters want and care about throughout the country, right? People who are the most possibly connected to the issues on the ground.
I don't even think that they don't know. I mean, that's obviously what you're saying.
Yeah.
But I think it's that my theory about liberal money has always been, and I don't mean liberal in the sense that we say that, I'm saying any money on the left, let's say, is that there is something in the way that people who are on the left, center left, whatever you want to say, when they expend money, I think their personality type is such that it's a creative endeavor on some level. They want ownership of and you hear this from people on the left, like you don't get liberal money that will provide for operating expenses. It's always got to be some type of like special project.
Yeah.
Oh, no. I'm experiencing it right now. I can tell you.
Okay.
With Matriarch, we're pitching people. They want us. We have projects, but it's like you have to function.
Like I want to be able to put like a little brass plaque on it, like this project by Sam Seder.
Right.
As opposed to, I think on the right, where they're just like, oh yeah, no, I don't have to feed that sense of me. I just want returns.
No, financial returns.
I just need returns. And it's maybe not even financial. It could be just like, I just want to see results. I don't care.
But the end result for Republican donors is 99 times out of 100. Like, I want tax cuts on this.
Yeah, I think so. But I do think that, I think probably the Koch brothers. Well, I mean,
and Democratic donors too are guilty of it. And I mean, it's this narcissistic enterprise sometimes where it's both they want to be creative, but they also want to feel like good people. Like they want to perform being good people by being a part of the Democratic Party.
That's not problematic. Like whatever incentive people have to give is what it is. I'm not as convinced. I think a lot of those people on the right are ideological. I don't know what their net returns are in the taxes. They probably do a little bit better, but they also could expend that energy not on politics and just like, I don't know, shove the money in the stock market. And I think there is an ideological, I think it's nuts, but I also think that their relationship to spending money is different than it is on the left. Like, it's like the only equivalent I could say is it's like dentist money in like the film business, where it's like, you get that money, you're doing an independent film, the dentist, they called it dentist money, but it was really just somebody who doesn't
know what that means.
It just means that somebody who has money, they don't necessarily know the film business, but they want to have an influence on it.
Oh,
and so they give the money, and then they come in like, oh, I have an idea for this scene, and I have an idea for that scene. And it's like,
you hired my daughter to be in the film.
Exactly. And my experience of like just talking to people who try and raise money on any endeavor on the left is that there has to be a project that there's some ownership of, like, I created this, or it was involved in the birth of this thing, as opposed to like, oh yeah, no, my money went to paying for the printers and the rent.
Which is hysterical, because in a campaign, it's just the opposite. When you're running a campaign, your whole thing is help us pay for these, yard signs, help us pay for van, help us. I mean, that's how we fundraised every step. You remember, Sam, like, we had all these goals, help us get on the debate stage, help us do this. And that works. But for these big donors, it's almost like it's a philanthropic venture. When I say, I mean, actually philanthropy, where, you have to write these grants, and the grants are associated with projects. There's some overhead, but that's literally what it's the same model. It's like, but then again, you have folks like Priorities who can just like walk up to Bill Maher and say, we're going to defeat Mitt Romney, give us $1 million. And he's like, all right, you guys seem to know what you're doing. And then they say things like data.
Yeah. So what I guess I'm getting at, maybe it's a little cynical, but the narcissism of it is kind of what bothers me. It's like the equivalent of the Hamilton cast, like changing the lyrics to vote for Joe Biden. Like, you feel like you're doing something, and that's mostly what it's all about to you. Because if you really wanted to do something, your money would be targeted in the ways that you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Yes. I mean, that's the point, is that there wants to be a feeling of creativity, of like,
right. And then that makes it about you, and it's not true philanthropy. I mean, I watch Real Housewives, and all they do is like, they do these grand galas for like child arthritis or something like that. And like, it's really just so they can get dressed up and get drunk and throw wine at each other.
Right.
And
Well, that's actually also the other side of this. When I was a national co-chair for Obama, I mean, that's all it was. Just people want to go to the parties. They wanted to go to the inauguration. They wanted to go to the Obama concerts. And the level that like you raised got you that access. Mm-hmm. So if you raised $250,000 off of 5 people, then you suddenly got a hotel room at the convention, next to the convention. You got to go to a private convention concert in a hotel room with like James Taylor, true story. This was a Clintonian thing. I mean, Clinton famously sold the Lincoln bedroom to donors. And so, ultimately, I think that's what made Bernie so unique. And we don't talk about this enough, is that he completely broke the model. I mean, he came up at a point where he was not part of that ecosystem, and they hated him because he was an independent and he didn't raise money for the Senate Dems or when he was in Congress, the same thing. He didn't have to play those games. But at the same time, you had the rise of the internet and the ability to raise small dollar donations, which just broke through. And I think the story of this election is, it wasn't just Bernie who did that. Like, Elizabeth Warren also did it. Other candidates, including Joe Biden, were able to use small dollars. But I think the question is now, well, if you can raise money off of small dollars in Georgia, in Kentucky, wherever, why do you still have to be so reliant on these big corporate checks? Because you can have a fully functioning party now, and you've just shown it in this election, and not only be on the left off of small dollar donations.
I mean, I think, frankly, it's a worldview on some respects, and you feel more comfortable in raising money from some people, and it really is going to come down to where there has to be more people who raise their money in the way that a Bernie or an AOC or small donors do, that need to leverage that money and take over the party, or at least become the predominant factor, or at least enough of one that they can leverage the larger party. By
the way, that data from NGP also helps targeting like on social media and fundraising as well. Like, you can match it up. I'm no expert on this, but you can use the data to help you target specific donors. That could also be voters eventually too.
All right, let's watch a couple of clips here. This is that's interesting. And I think, I don't think we're going to get any of the type of reform that we're talking about at this point. I mean, I'm a little bit concerned about it,
Well, Trump gave them the perfect excuse to like wealthy people who were concerned about just, his demeanor, his, the way that he behaved. Like, it gave them an out and a reprieve from having to go down that harder road of taking small dollar donors, because the Democratic Party was such a fundraising juggernaut this time around, and it didn't really pay off that much.
No, there was a lot of wasted money, it seems like.
I don't know. I think everybody needs a fifth home.
Yeah, the yacht was super important.
I wish I was selling media for Amy McGrath. That's all I can.
Sam, there's still time.
Is she still buying media?
No, I mean for another. There's going to be another one, I'm sure.
6 years down the line, let's go. McGrath 2026, baby.
Meanwhile, let's move on to some of this. We got some clips here because this is sort of, it feels like in New York we're close to closing down the schools again. Just my own guess is that it's very possible after Thanksgiving we're going to see something like that. This is the biggest. There are more kids going to school, students going to school in New York City than in any other place in the country, and I think it's only about 300,000 or 400,000, and which is less than half, maybe even close to a third of the normal amount of kids going to school. They're obviously they're going remote. There's a huge percentage of kids who are just sort of like lost. I mean, not literally lost, but they're not showing up for remote school. They're not going into school. I mean, this is a very difficult time. And part of it is obviously, or a big part of it is that we can't prioritize sending kids to school and shut down everything else because there's not enough support from the government. Part of the problem why there's not enough support for the government because there's a significant portion of the country that does not believe that this is real. And part of that reason is because of idiots like Greg Gutfeld on Fox's The Five. Listen to this. Just the numbers are stunning right now. If you think, and this is just off the top of my head because every day we would read the numbers on the show. A month ago, we were at 80,000 new infections a day. I don't know what the number is today. I suspect
172,000.
Okay. More than
checked.
double.
Yeah.
More than double. Today, we're at 1,400 deaths a day, somewhere around that. Understand that deaths are a 4 to 5 week lagging indicator of where we are in terms of infections. If we have more than doubled in a month to today in terms of number of infections, we could possibly double in a month from now in terms of deaths per day. And at one point, we're also going to hit...
I'm sorry, it was 149,000.
149,000. Okay, so about double anyways.
Yeah.
And at one point, we're also going to hit a threshold where we do not have the capacity in ICUs to deal with all the very sick people. And that's not just a question of beds. That's a question of medical personnel. And then listen to this guy going on national television and saying this type of thing.
Juan and the governor, I'm thinking of becoming a liberal because you can trash people who have to make the cost benefit risk, the adult risk decisions. You can trash them. And then when they do the right thing, you could say, well, no, that's not good enough, even though I didn't share the risk at all. I had no skin in that game, and I can still say that. Here's the fact. Here's the bottom.
Pause it, please. I'm sorry. We're talking about someone who doesn't have risk in the game. The people that are dying of COVID-19 right now are disproportionately workers on the front lines, essential workers, people delivering you your sushi at night, right? Those are the people that are hurting. That's why it's about 4 to 3 times the rate for Black and Latino Americans and Native Americans in this country right now. So we're talking about risk assessment. You get to go home and have everything delivered to you because you're rich. Sorry.
No, line, okay? The mortality rate is 0.65. It has been declining consistently. That's 65 die out of 10,000 cases, all right? We're entering a stage of manageability, and it's only the increase in hospitalizations are really due, let's face it, to as the weather gets colder, people are going inside, that's going to cause a spread. However, the number of hospitalizations is not affecting non-COVID patients. What does that tell you? That we did the right thing with capacity, that the worst state right now is Wisconsin, has 10% COVID patients in the hospital. That's nothing compared to what was going on in the spring or in the first wave of the pandemic. So we are not at a crisis moment. We have to pat ourselves on the back for what America did. Let's talk about this vaccine, because it's pretty freaking amazing. It doesn't have any of the virus in it.
Pause 1 second. This effing moron. Okay, congratulations. We're down to 0.065 on a thing. That means 65 people out of 10,000. 1 month ago, we had 90,000 less cases per day. So now, today, whereas 1 month ago, we had 80,000 cases a day, 0.065, 6 times 8, 500, 600 people. It was a little bit higher than that, but let's just say 600 people dying a day, and now we're closer to 1,400. This moron apparently doesn't understand trajectory.
Well, what I don't understand is, do you remember? Sorry, go ahead.
Also play the clip of him desperately calling for Mitch McConnell to not stand in the way of a COVID relief bill that would mitigate the cost-benefit analysis that he's talking about that people need to make. Let's play that clip. Cue that clip up. Oh, it doesn't exist, because every day he went into work, it occurred to him.
I was wondering where that was.
I was like,
wait. To say, hey, this cost-benefit analysis that I think is so important that you shouldn't be shaming people about. Why don't you ask the leader of your party to do something about it? Unbelievable.
And why don't they have a full staff in studio?
And this guy sits in his mansion out in Long Island.
Yeah.
And just looks upon everything. He's like, I can't believe people are shaming people. Oh my God, give me a break. Why don't you sit a little closer to your colleagues?
What I don't understand is 8 months ago, in March, Kennedy, the other libertarian, because he's libertarian on Fox News, the other comedic libertarian who has a show. I remember same exact argument was being made by her, and they literally took her off air for several months because of that. And they're allowing this behavior again, but this time it's not on Fox Business, it's on Fox Mainstream at this moment.
Right. It's unbelievably reprehensible. There's no doubt the vaccine has the potential of being a big success story, but it's going to come after there are going to be hundreds of thousands more dead Americans between now and we get to even close to saturation point that we need for vaccination.
It takes such a specific kind of stupid and cognitive dissonance, but that comes from your own stupidity and lack of understanding of the world, to not connect the numbers you're seeing with deaths to the actual pain that people are feeling, right? And that's what I always shocks me when I watch these Fox hosts. They're always, talking about meritocracy and, the smartest people rise to the top, and right? Part of being smart is understanding and connecting real life data to what's happening and visualizing it and understanding that people are suffering in this insanely acute way. I mean, people get COVID and don't feel right for months after. Are you volunteering, Greg Gutfeld, to get everything back to normal? Why don't you make the risk assessment if you think this is so important and put yourself out there on the front lines?
Because it goes up against his short-term cost-benefit analysis, which is exploiting workers makes them money. That's the business model of the Republican Party. And as long as that's the business model, they're not going to be taking into account real math and real human lives.
And think long-term, right? Are you an animal with a very, I don't know, a frontal lobe? What's the right part of the brain, right? I don't know. Think long term. That's also a part of being a thoughtful human being existing in society.
On some level, we're maybe giving him too much credit for actually being sincere about this, because there is no doubt in my mind that we could compare the number of times he has called upon Republican leaders to provide resources for people to not have to make that cost-benefit analysis. We could compare the number of times he has spoken out about that on his television show with the 4 people who died at Benghazi. 4 people are dying in this country in 15 minutes. Any given 15 minutes. It's probably more, actually.
Well, Sam, wait till they do the Christmas special, because the war on Christmas is really going to be about COVID. And you, God forbid, you don't spend time with your family on Christmas and get COVID.
Yeah.
Like you can't, it's just, you can't do those two things. You can't stay home. You have to spend money. You have to be with your family. You have to worship Christ in the Christmas tree.
There are 60 people. You have one person dying a minute in this country now.
Very
Every
Christ-like
60
not to
seconds,
care about that, speaking
there
of
is
Christmas.
a person dying in this country of COVID. Every 60 minutes. Every minute, there is a person dying of COVID in this country. Maybe it's closer, like a minute and 20 seconds or 10 seconds. And you think about how many hearings the Republicans held over Benghazi, how many hours of television were dedicated. I am sure that Greg Gutfeld could fill weeks of episodes with how I decried what was going on with Benghazi because of those 4 people who died. There are 4 people died before during the course of his rant we just watched.
Maybe we should blame Hillary for COVID, and then they'll care about COVID.
How many policies did they put in place after 9/11? Right, of course, one of the most tragic events in our history. How many multiples?
2 days.
How many multiples of people have died due to COVID than the 3,000 plus? Right, on 9/11. I mean, I can't do math, but it's tens of times over, and we changed the way we do everything in this country, everything. And now it's just, no, go back to normal. I want normal now.
It's not just stooges like Greg Gutfeld who are promoting this, the idea that COVID is not particularly real. It's not a crisis. We don't have to worry about any of these things. Here is a clip of Sherrod Brown. He's talking about the appointment of a gold bug to the Federal Reserve. They are attempting to, Donald Trump is attempting to insert a person who believes that we should return to the gold standard, the Federal Reserve.
Well, Sam, you kind of sound like you don't like ideological diversity.
I don't mind the ideological diversity, but the insanity of returning to the gold standard. But here is just as relevant in this moment, and hopefully that there will be enough defections from the Republican side that we will not see her appointed to the Fed. But here is Sherrod Brown just asking Dan Sullivan to recognize the fact that, like, literally you are spewing potentially you're not potential. You're spewing your aerosolized whatever's inside you on the rest of the Senate. We don't know. Hopefully you don't have any COVID, but it's not like we haven't seen high incidence of COVID amongst Republican leaders as of late. Here it is Sherrod Brown calling him out. This is why we have a crisis in this country, folks.
Without objection.
President.
Senator from Ohio.
I'd start by asking the presiding officer to please wear a mask as he speaks, and people below him are, I can't tell you what to do, but I know that the behavior...
I don't wear a mask when I'm speaking, like most senators.
Well, most senators...
So I'll put it on, but I don't need your instruction from...
I know you don't need my instruction, but there clearly isn't much interest in this body in public health. We have a president who hasn't shown up at the coronavirus task force meeting in months. We have a majority leader that calls us back here to vote on an unqualified nominee and at the same time to vote for judge after judge after judge, exposing all the people who can't say anything, I understand, the people in front of you and the presiding officer, and expose all the staff here, and the majority leader just doesn't seem to care. Mr. President, the American people...
Clear on what he's talking about. If you've ever been to the Senate, or maybe you've seen like a wide shot, right below him, literally right below him, he is elevated in like a, it's almost like it would be a judge in a courtroom, except for instead of there being this space between the judge and where the defense and the prosecutor sits, there are staffers, people who are, recording votes, people who are taking minutes, people who don't have the ability to say, yeah, there it is, right down there. all of those folks down there who don't have the ability to turn around and go like, hey, Senator, would you please not breathe your crap on me?
And also who are less powerful.
That's my point.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
They are subordinate in terms of like employment there, and they don't feel comfortable turning around to a senator. And I guess it's a little bit of surprise. These guys may have big egos. I mean, as displayed by the fact, like, I don't need to take your instruction.
And they still don't understand the concept. They still don't understand the concept that your mask protects other people. It's not the other way around. So even if they're wearing masks and you have COVID, they're still screwed. We are months and months into this, and they still don't understand this concept. Willfully don't understand it.
They can't show that they understand it because that's weakness. It's political weakness. And looking at that photo again, I don't know if you could put that back up on screen. I don't think anybody's wearing a mask unless you're just displaying what a typical.
That was just a general.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know. I couldn't tell.
Well, they're in the splash zone, so
exactly. It's just unbelievable. It just like this.
This alone, by the way, this is why Democrats need to control the Senate, because then at least they have a leader who actually punishes, reprimands folks for violating just basic rules, public health rules.
Modeling this stuff, like it's just, honestly, like it's like this, it's dystopian. Like the idea that like there's like a movement, and it's gonna, Binder said this the other day. It's it's a combination of QAnon, but there is going to be like the Joe Biden, like the version of the birthers.
Yeah.
And the Tea Party is going to be centered around like some offshoot of like, Joe Biden stealing our liberty by
the vaccine. He's implanting stuff in our skin or whatever.
Vaccine and masks and this and that. Like,
the vaccine was a great idea when Trump was pushing it and saying,
exactly.
We'll have it by election day. But Biden, I don't know. I don't trust that thing.
Let's call it Trump's vaccine. How about that?
Yeah, then
Trump scene.
I'm fine with that.
Listen, Trump, make all the money on the vaccine. We don't care. You've made it on everything else. Just we'll give you this. We'll swap out the Arctic for the vaccine. You can make all the money.
It's funny that you say that. This is completely not apropos of the moment, but I think that like it occurred to me the other day, like how much the label of Obamacare really ended up being a liability for like, and I think like, at one time we knew it, and then I just felt like, it was like, whatever, what difference does it make? Like, and frankly, I still think that the Affordable Care Act also ended up being a liability for it because it was not managing expectations. Patient protection would have been much better way of referring to it, because that was the one thing that law, outside of expansion of Medicaid, which is a separate, really sort of like very distinct from the Affordable Care Act, it seems to me.
We had a long discussion about branding yesterday, just really quickly, and like that's where Republicans are just infinitely better with the thing with Obamacare and of course the death tax and the climate change. But
we also used it after there was a point where it was their term, and then Obama just started saying it.
Yes.
And on the stump, he said on the stump for Joe Biden. I was like,
well,
whoa.
I think there was a time where he basically said like, I can't fight this. I'm going to appropriate it. And I think there was a lack of understanding of just how much a motivating factor he personally was for Republicans. Like, and I think if he had that awareness, he would have said, and frankly, I don't know that many people really understood just how much of a motivating factor Obama himself was.
It's so weird to me. He's so like, I don't know. I mean, it's weird to be in the mind of, besides, yes, I guess it's the racism. But
yeah.
Okay, never mind.
I mean, and if it's not like a direct racism, it is just basically a low grade threat.
Yeah.
That is perceived. I mean, it is racism, I guess. But I mean, I think it's not even, I don't know that you need to have that consciousness for it to be racism, but it's
my point was just that he's like, I think despite my political misgivings, charismatic and likable. So it's just, but
of course,
yeah, I mean, it's just,
but on some level that made him more threatening.
Right.
I think probably on every level, like, He's not. That's why he was a Manchurian candidate, because it's under
He's
that.
too slick.
It's under that charismatic, likable veneer.
Exactly.
Reverend Wright.
The Kenyans recruited him.
Exactly.
To take over our government. God damn it.
Get rid of his accent.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say, like, I remember in North Dakota during the Obama years, there were people that would tell me, like, yeah, I get, like, the Republicans are going crazy, but Obama needs to cool it, too. And it's like, what do you mean cool it? Like, what is that? It's just like a general feeling they have that he's, like, promoting some sort of crypto Black Panther agenda.
Well, I mean, it started in the campaign. Thank you, Hillary, for some of these biggest attacks on him.
Oh, right. Well, yeah. I mean, that was what got me blocked by Neera Tanden.
That was it, really?
Well, she said something like, after Ossoff lost the first time, she was like, when they go low, we go high, and it doesn't fucking work, right? Like, that's what she said. And I said, well, Hillary's team went pretty low with Obama, and the whole and then the darkening of the skin and the ads, and we got in a back and forth. She blocked it
because it was her idea. I always thought that the Republican primary, someone should have taken all of these shots. I don't know why they didn't do it. That Trump had with the Clintons and used it. Like, if Fox News has literally just been like the anti-Clinton network for 20 years, I just understand why they never went after Trump for being so Clintonian, like rubbing up close.
Because I think every one of them, until it was too late, were terribly afraid of. They knew who their voters were.
Right.
They knew that Donald Trump fit the suit. Like, he was the Republican that they had constructed. The reports were that, like, the Murdochs didn't like Trump, but internally in Fox News there were a lot of, like, but Ailes was like, the viewers like Trump or whatever. All right, but why didn't Jeb Bush do it? I mean, the other part,
like an ad. I'm not saying
sort of the classic sort of like conservative mentality. Like, I'm going to do what is best for me. And it's best for me not to alienate Trump's base, because I could get them to beat Bush or to beat Cruz or to beat whatever. Speaking of Ted Cruz, let's, can we, Brendan, can you go to like a COVID page so we can just look to see what the stats are and what the date is today? Because Ted Cruz is an effing despicable. I mean, everybody knows this. This is not a news report, but, this is like the entertainment news of like, it's not hard hitting news. This is the COVID in the U.S. latest map and count. Can you zoom in just a little bit so people can see that? It's here we are. Okay, there we are. Look at where we are in July. Now look at where we are in November. Look at where we were in April, right? I mean, this is what we have here. You can look at the 14-day change. It is plus 82%.
Wow.
Remember, deaths are a lagging indicator. And here is, and also November 16th, you should remember, is a Monday. Usually when it's Sunday, it's tough to catch up. Here is Ted Cruz on July 22nd of this year, explaining to people his prediction about COVID.
An interesting thing, if it ends up that Biden wins in November, I hope he doesn't. I don't think he will, but if he does, I guarantee you the week after the election, suddenly all those Democratic governors, all those Democratic mayors will say, everything's magically better. Go back to work, go back to school. Suddenly the problems are solved. You won't even have to wait for Biden to be sworn.
Oh, my God.
Yep. COVID's going to go away week after the election.
Yep.
Hot take. Good prediction. I would love to gamble with Ted Cruz.
You know what? I mean, just like contemplate something. I mean, obviously, this is a lot of a Monday morning quarterbacking. Although at the time I thought like you're wasting money with Amy McGrath. I don't think that kind of money necessarily, I don't buy the idea like, millions of dollars went to Amy McGrath. That's what inhibited giving to other places. I don't think it works that way. I think people just, they're expansive, But can you imagine if you had that, let's say $30 million right now, and the Democrats just did like a national ad campaign, just running Ted Cruz, that clip, and a graph of where COVID
and that would have I mean, even before the election, things like that.
No, not even before the election.
But now. But
I'm saying, like,
tying Republicans to the coronavirus.
Right.
Yes. Like,
they did it with, I mean, actually the brilliance of the Obamacare, they actually did that with Obamacare. They had a massive ad campaign for the Affordable Care Act. Now, can you imagine that for COVID? If anybody's watching from the Biden transition team administration, how about you take a little bit of that money?
I mean,
that's how you're going to win Georgia, by the way. That's it.
Spend the off year. Exactly. You spend the off year, even the off year, forget about Georgia, but certainly in terms of Georgia, like, why aren't you just telling people right now, when in an ad now versus in the run up to the campaign, that much more powerful, that much more effective, because it's not perceived as a campaign. It is not being buried by a bunch of other campaign ads. But just now, like, hey, want to make sure you're aware of this. You don't have to be on Twitter to see this. You should be able to see it when you watch TV. Ted Cruz, paid for by people who actually care about Americans' health, like Americans for Sanity. Like, what? Like, why are we not seeing something like that? Like, how hard would that be? Because I got news for you. Like, this is the thing. And when Brett Kavanaugh is up for the Supreme Court, when Amy Coney Barrett's up for the Supreme Court, millions of dollars flood the airwaves in support of these guys. These issue campaigns, bless you, they exist, and Democrats just don't have that notion. I mean, that's the difference. That's like, on some level, that's Doug Jones saying, don't focus on the candidate.
That's right.
Focus on the district. In this instance, the district is America, or maybe
that's
it's Georgia,
what the Democrats are supposed to do. So, like, Jamie Harrison, I mean, while I like him as a person, and I covered him as a person, he was a state chair. He's a lobbyist. You need someone who understands what it means to build a party that exists when, like Doug Jones said, but that's not something new that he said. This is something that Democrats
going to do with him as state chair. I'm curious because it doesn't seem like, and how did South Carolina do with Harrison as state chair?
Yeah. I mean,
I'm not trying to be a jerk, but.
Well, some of that also has to do with, I'm not saying that it was his management. It's just to do, there's no state party infrastructure. So is Jamie Harrison the one who is going to revive? I mean, I covered the DNC chair race. No, I can tell you because I have him on camera from 3 years ago when he ran for chair before. They're not interested in using the party as an apparatus to win the messaging wars, which ultimately wins them the electoral wars. They're just not interested in it. It's just not how it functions.
But it did function that way not that long ago. Like, that's what's annoying, is that, like, Dean did try to implement some of these changes. Like, why is the imagination so short? Like, I think about that when people talk about abolishing ICE as like this radical idea. Like, it's not been around that long. I mean,
right.
that's different from, an electoral perspective. I'm talking policy, obviously. But, like, why are people's memories and imagination so goddamn short?
What's his
Off-ed cycles.
Gore Vidal.
Yeah.
I talk about this all the time. Gore Vidal was one of our early guests on the original Majority Report on the radio show. And he,
was he really? He's alive?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
He came in studio multiple times.
Yeah, like 06, something like that?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was great. In fact, at one point, actually, I think we had him on and called up Janine's dad and had tried to have Gore Vidal convince Janine's dad. I think they actually became sort of friendly.
Wow.
But he I think at the time, maybe right before, sometime around then, had a book, United States of Amnesia. And he would come in and he would talk about this. And I was just like, I vaguely know the historical, I couldn't really grasp what he was talking about. I understand, I could understand the concept, but I just couldn't feel it viscerally. And now, having done this for 15 years and watching how short the memory, just like we were just talking about Benghazi, like if there was a consciousness of how hard, the right went on Benghazi, those 4 deaths over and over and over again, because we just remember it in terms of like, that's how Hillary's, emails came up. But for them, the animating principle for years was those 4 deaths. If that was if our brains had the capacity to sort of like remember that and then hear these guys go like, look, 600 people died today. It's not that big of a deal, or 1,400 people. We've got a crisis. Like everybody would be, and I don't know if it's just this country, but it's sort of, at least Vidal's idea was that, there is something unique about our society that just sort of like
capitalism.
Well, I mean, there's capitalism other places too.
No, but like thinking about it from terms of how we do our electoral system. So yes, there's capitalism in other places, but for instance, in the UK, there's a shorter time period where you can actually do electioneering. Everything is ratings driven here. It's not that you have more public media, even if it is being slowly privatized in other countries or they're oligarch owned. Our entire system, whether it's campaign finance, whether you're running for office, is quarterly. Whether it's just Wall Street in general, is quarterly. Daily stock markets, buying and selling, the ratings of a show. I mean, Benghazi was a ratings bonanza. That's why, but it's not because they thought they were going to defeat Democrats. It's because they realized, ratings are great on Fox News during Benghazi. AOC is great for ratings. Hillary's great for ratings. Kamala Harris is going to be amazing for ratings.
Yep. I think that's probably true, actually. And the idea that we just like churn stuff out. Don't ever digest it. It's like almost like that. What is that stuff that they had that they developed that was like the fat that wasn't absorbed and it basically would just go right through you for that ice cream. There was a fad at one point.
I want that. Tell me more.
No, you don't.
Well, I mean, is that what all the diet sodas are made out of? It's like 0 calories, except it's like the
there was some type
they
had like the fat-free ice cream at one point that was like it wouldn't the fat wouldn't bind and
but you're putting that in your body
and
right?
It's just going right through you.
Cool.
I don't want to get more explicit than that.
Right.
Literally going.
Yeah. Here is Fox and Friends, and the exponential increase in infections, the exponential increase in hospitalizations, which all suggest the exponential increase in deaths doesn't seem to be bothering them as much as the idea that how are people going to cope if on the 3rd Thursday in November, they can't get together with 5 or 10 or 15 of their closest relatives.
And ultimately, Charles, I mean, this is unlike any holiday season we've ever lived through with a pandemic. Yeah. When they start to quantify it by saying, okay, 10 people, 15 people, 20 people, whatever, that's one thing. But then I think the average person takes the personal responsibility. You know what the risks are. Do the right thing.
One of the big overarching stories with all of this has been the isolation story, the separation of families, and how important a role that is. The mental fatigue.
Politicians don't care.
I know personally what's happened. That this is the day. This Thanksgiving is when we need each other more than ever before. And the notion that you're going to come to my house and count how many people are there, that is separation of families.
Oh, my God.
It's the most important day of the year, I think, outside of, Christmas. And
twice.
This
Do they
time
force
it means
hysterectomies
so much
at their
more.
Thanksgivings?
We have been separated. We've been forced apart.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically equivalent to orphaning over 660 children and breaking up families and traumatizing them forever. It's the exact same thing.
Same thing.
By the way, this isn't politics. Like, you just know that your viewers like Thanksgiving and feel good and warm about Thanksgiving. And so it's the Democrats culturally and the left's fault that you can't get together with your family. Or it's like the pandemic that could kill Grandma Ida and also spread it to a bunch of other vulnerable people, cousin Jake with diabetes, whatever,
I mean, they're like, we're exhausted, the isolation. I'm just I've been around my family. I would like a break. Can we just take Thanksgiving off for once? Seriously. It actually does illustrate the totally different processing, like how Democrats versus Republicans or liberals versus conservatives process experiences. Like,
well, but I mean, I understand the idea, the concept of like, if you weren't with your parents, you might want to see your parents or you want to see your cousins. You have this annual thing. But, the idea that you're going to demonize politicians about it, it's like, my doctor has an agenda where they're like, you can't, you have psoriasis. I don't know. You have some type of heart condition, and so you shouldn't eat cholesterol. Like they just don't care about how much I love, fatty foods.
Doctors' war on Thanksgiving.
Exactly.
Like, you can't have that much gravy.
It's not. Politicians are only doing it because, to the extent that they're doing anything, it is only because the medical experts are telling them. Like this whole concept that it's just like exercising, they're just saying that because they can. Well, first off, they can't, as we can see, like in various places around the country. But all they can do is really model it. And these people, I mean, honestly, it's like, if aliens came down and witness this, like you could see them just going like, we've got to set up tribunals. Oh my God, this is nuts.
Yeah.
Like there are actually like huge swaths of the population, people with control over the media and politicians who are actively encouraging people to essentially like.
And why was Charles Payne not in studio for that segment?
Exactly.
Right.
The idea, I
thought he lost his position at Fox News too. Like they brought him back.
There's business now.
It's unimaginably disgusting.
Yeah.
And he would say like, this is the real separation. Right. The other one's actually kidnapping.
Right.
This is a pandemic is keeping families separated. Correct. There's no, it's like the one time to use the passive mood is there's a pandemic. That's real. That exists. Mm-hmm. What we do is a function of that, as opposed to this family's together. We're the ones ripping it apart. When you talk about those.
He also mentioned like they were going to come into your home and they're going to count like how many people. I'm like, is that the next phase of this? They're going to, the crazy socialists are now coming to your house trying to separate you all. It's
And maybe you could have like empathy then if you're so concerned about family separation for the fact that there were actually families permanently separated as opposed to the fact that like you have to take the holiday off. I mean, this is the equivalent of like, oh no, like this time you got to go with your spouse to his families for Thanksgiving. Like you don't get to see your cousins this year. That's the same as what ICE is doing to immigrants.
But they don't believe it. When I was on Fox News last week and I talked about that on air, I can't begin to tell you how many people were like, that's a lie. That's not true. This is, even Fox reported it. And someone was like attaching the Fox articles of the child separation. When you live in that world and you don't hear that truth, it was the first time they'd ever heard it, basically, when I said it on air. I mean, that's bonkers to me that like, they're just living in an alternate universe where that doesn't exist. So then when you Google family separation, now this is what's going to pop up instead of.
Right. The horror of avoiding a pandemic at Thanksgiving. Well, we're not going to avoid it. I mean, the fact of the matter is that like there are too many people. We are too interconnected as a society where you can have this many people who take this attitude. It is going to be a nightmare.
It's a great time for an airline strike. Sarah Nelson wants to.
Oh, that is good.
Do a general strike.
That is a good time to do that. Actually, it would be helpful to the country. Of course,
yep.
I'm not sure, frankly, from a political standpoint, they would I think it would be hard because they would never get the credit that they would deserve for inhibiting a massive explosion of COVID, which I think is going to happen anyways. This is just like, it's going to be exponentially bigger because of Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Well, this is impressive on some level. And again, it's, part of the problem of like, and I think sort of the idea that some people had that having Donald Trump as president for 4 years would somehow bring about some type of like broader awareness and usher in an age of people's realization about about conservatism and how the left is best and this and that. On some level, it managed to activate a lot of like suburban Democrats that weren't engaged before. But the idea of any type of like fundamental change that would come out of the Trump administration, no, as far as I'm concerned, it just sets us back 3 or 4 years. And because we've all been diverting with, the fight to sort of rebuild the House has been sidelined to stop the fire in the House, essentially.
And just like that whole philosophy just doesn't take into account the ticking clock of climate change, but whatever.
Indeed.
Yeah. Or anybody's immediate material interests.
Exactly.
That's a
little time.
That is an underestimation or a lack of awareness about the cost associated with it, as opposed to like a sense like this is a magic box. We go into the Trump thing and then what comes out the other end is so much better.
Yeah.
Here is CNN panel. We're seeing this idiocy now. It's like it just snaps back.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's literally like just like a branch that's been bent and it just snaps back. As soon as the tension of Trump gone, you see stuff like this, and you see Jake Tapper talking to Fidel Castro. Like essentially let's just do clip number 3 first.
And Gloria, if he's doing this to weaken Joe Biden, he's doing this at the expense.
Pause it for 1 second. This is the idea of Donald Trump withdrawing from Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Now, I actually think this is like, I don't quite gather how this is a way of weakening Joe Biden. Now, it's quite possible that that Donald Trump has a laundry list. He has a little.
That's what I think. Yep.
And one of them was like, how can I hurt Iran?
Yep.
Because, Donald Trump really care about bombing Iran?
No, and he's been saying and toying with announcing that he's withdrawing troops from Afghanistan. Like, it must have been, this is the 7th time. He
has a new defense secretary now, right? Like, whatever.
You got to revamp it. It's like a remake of a movie.
Why is he doing this? Now, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe Donald Trump deep down is against military occupation in countries that start with an A. Like he's ramped up our drone program in Sudan. He is what Saudi Arabia has done to these countries has been devastating. The idea that Donald Trump gives a crap about 4,000 troops in Afghanistan, I'm sorry, he doesn't. Now somebody else might. I don't know who it is. I'm not sophisticated enough to know who, from a geopolitical standpoint, it benefits to us put more strain on NATO in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
Personally, I would like to have taken our troops out of there 10 years ago.
So it's a good thing. But again, as you're saying, as he's doing all this, he's like the U.S. is backing Moroccan troops in Western Sahara. And then, of course, like everything we're doing in Yemen. And it's completely.
And there may be better ways than other ways. I don't know. I'm going to cop to this right now. I'm not sophisticated enough to know the various players. I don't know what Turkey's interests are here. I don't know what Saudi Arabia's interests are here. I don't know what Russia's interests are here. I don't know
infrastructure in China.
I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like, who has an agenda to weaken NATO? Maybe NATO should be, in some respects, pull back.
You do know whose interests are to weaken NATO. Come on.
I have ideas, but it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
So very interesting that the Arctic sale happened. Whose geopolitical interest does that benefit?
Indeed. Like the idea that Donald Trump is doing this because like the one thing I want for my legacy is to get rid of those 4,000 troops in Afghanistan. You've got to be a moron. And so unless the analysis of this is along the lines of who's benefiting, how does that ultimately help people in Afghanistan who live in Afghanistan, who are trying to basically just like feed their family, not get killed. unless that analysis includes that, rather than just sort of like it is, your anti-imperial instincts about America, because that's not what's going on here. Those 4,000 troops in Afghanistan, it's not going to satiate your anti-imperialist notions. And I consider myself to be an anti-imperialist, which is why I'm not going to make any assumptions as to who's benefiting. But I can tell you, Donald Trump is not operating in the interests of the Afghani people. I'm not sure who is here, but that better be part of your analysis. But listen to CNN just sort of like, again, botch this, even though there may be a point that, like, if we draw down in Afghanistan, we should be doing it in a maybe a way that just ensures who's benefiting and at who's paying.
And Gloria, I mean, if he's doing this to weaken Joe Biden, he's doing this at the expense of the safety of American troops.
Absolutely.
To do something this quickly. I mean, not that we should be particularly surprised. We're also watching him stand idly by while Americans die, and he doesn't really seem to give a damn that they're dying of coronavirus. He hasn't changed his tune. He just pretends it doesn't exist. And here he is doing something that really could put at risk American troops.
Right. Absolutely. And I think what he wants to do, as Abby is saying, is drop a problem in Joe Biden's lap. And if you know the history of Joe Biden, he has not been one who is for robust military intervention in any way, shape, or form. So he can drop this problem on Biden. And if Biden believes he needs to put these troops back, he would do it, because if he believes, and his Pentagon brass believe, that it is in the safety of American troops and in the national security interests of this country. But that is not what this president is talking about or thinking. I think what we need to hear right now are from some of the military brass who may be out, who can perhaps talk about what this means for the safety of our troops in the region.
Here we go. Here we go. Let me diagram this for you, okay? Troops.
Thank you.
If the troops go out like this, hurts their safety, hurts safety. So what to make them safe again, once they're here, to go back here.
But that place is not very safe, Sam. I'm confused.
Well, but then
they have to go back to the unsafe.
Go back out of there, because it's this process. Here's the non-safety zone, which is why you come back in through the back door.
Oh.
And that's the non-safety zone is here. I mean, they're just out there just like jibber jabbering about whether we should take troops out, what should be waging war there or not, whatever it is. I mean, it's just.
Well, this is what and I'm not here to defend Trump supporters, but part of why they are mistrustful and don't like a lot of the media's coverage is because, I mean, this is a good thing. I believe that any withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, it's so long overdue. It was part of his campaign promise. It was part of the Tucker Carlson-esque fake populism that he pitched to the American public. It's a good thing.
Let's take it and bank it.
But of course they have to make it about, it's this Machiavellian thing to hurt Joe Biden. I don't think Trump's capable of that kind of thought. And I think we should give credit when a president is taking us out of a multi-decade war that has killed far too many. It is a war crime and an illegal war.
I think what she's trying to do.
Also get a low-cost loan.
Yeah.
Too. So that's good.
I think what she's trying to do, she's not explaining it properly, and maybe it's just because she has no proof, is it's creating a debacle. It's creating a geopolitical nightmare that on day one, Joe Biden is going to have to reassemble whatever normalcy, their version of normalcy is, geopolitically. Not to mention what's going on in Armenia right now with the geopolitical tides are shifting drastically and shockingly fast in terms of the whole Mediterranean and Turkey's expansion of interest. I mean, this is a real problem, I think, that was instigated by Trump. I don't necessarily disagree with you, Emma. It's just, this is what is going to happen.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
I mean, and I think though, you don't not do the right thing in order to, because you're fearful of potential dominoes falling afterwards. And like, give Trump credit, even if he's doing a completely insane narcissistic thing, but like, they're incapable of doing that in especially issues of war. Like, they'll give him credit for the mother of all bombs. Remember back in the day?
Oh my God, like the first thing he did, yeah.
This is the moment he became president. Oh, so you're gonna give credit for maiming and murdering people in the rural Middle East, but when he decides to bring thousands of American troops back home and he's still keeping 2,000 there, oh no, that's harming the troops somehow.
It's just psycho the level that it's discussed on too. Like the way she says it might hurt American troops. Like, I don't mean this like, about the IM earlier as a, to disregard the American troops, but that is not like the only top line in this discussion to say like, oh, he's doing this to hurt Biden and American troops. I think people can sense that for what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
that's why can't you just be honest and say it's gonna shake up everything geopolitically? Like, can't you just say that?
Yeah.
Why does it have to be about like the troops?
Analysis, right?
I mean, I think either she doesn't understand that, or it's more like they don't want to sort of talk about actually what actually like they don't want to go any deeper than just total platitudes. Like, and the problem is that like it confused her when she said like, this is going to harm the troops if we come out quickly. Like, the idea that we can't evacuate 4,000 troops in a safe way is just, I'm sorry, absurd.
I'm pretty sure they have the funding to do it.
I mean, I think like the military has the expertise of getting those people out of there safely.
Dunkirk, Mutt.
Then the idea that like, we're going to put them in harm's way if we do this quickly, and Joe Biden may have to send them back to keep them safe. Excuse me, what?
Well, they still be home for Christmas.
Now, and
so they might get coronavirus, guys. That's the problem. That's what the agenda is. Bring the troops home for Christmas.
So we can give them COVID. That's the liberal agenda.
Exactly. All right. Should we watch this? I don't want to do the Jake Tapper Warnock thing. Like, I don't even want to give that any like credence at all.
Yeah. Less attention.
Oh, come on.
All right, let's do it. This is, I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, the idea that like people are going to vote in Georgia on their Senate candidate based upon 25, I mean, God knows what Kelly Loeffler was doing 25 years. I mean, how about like what she was doing like 25 months ago when she was basically insider trading over COVID? Maybe that, I don't know. But here we go. This is the important stuff. You actually came in contact with Castro, is that right?
Let me ask you about one of those attacks, because Senator Loeffler keeps mentioning on the campaign trail an incident from 1995 when you were a youth pastor at a New York church which hosted a speech by Fidel Castro. Now, you've said you had nothing to do with that invitation, but just to clarify for our viewers, did you attend the speech, and do you understand why there are so many people who view Castro as a murderous tyrant and not someone to be celebrated?
I'll tell you what I understand. I understand why Kelly Loeffler is trying to change the subject. I was a youth pastor. I had nothing to do with that program. I did not make any decisions regarding the program. I've never met the Cuban dictator. And so I'm not connected to him. I'll tell you whose names are on the ballot: Raphael Warnock and Kelly Loeffler. This race is not about anybody else.
Well, I mean, I think part of what his other analysis was, or I just saw this as someone defending him online. He may have said it. I'm sorry if I didn't get that right. But like, what kind of he was just a Christian pastor, and that was many decades ago, and there was just one guest that came through. Like it's almost just. It's irrelevant. Like, or I don't know. Keep going.
I would have responded and been like, Jake Tapper, you've hosted right-wing murderous people on your show. Does that mean that you're aligned with them?
I mean, it's also even worse than that, because it's like, Jake, when you were an intern at CNN, they hosted, I mean, he was a youth pastor. Like,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, I was a youth pastor. And yeah, one of the things they did is they always pick a youth pastor to pick a world leader that you get to invite to the church. And you know, I mean, honestly, give me a break. It is that's something that you laugh about. If you're the host, you go like, so I understand that they are blaming you for being in a church when you were a youth pastor at the same time that that Fidel Castro was there.
Describe Fidel Castro too? Like, what?
It's just amazing. But
I mean, I'm not surprised we know that.
I think everyone short of the candidates, like candidates can do what they feel like is opportune in the moment. But I think everybody underneath them needs to stop training voters to be like Republicans on these issues. Okay, bring up two names that are very simple in these discussions: Nelson Mandela, or if you want, Barack Obama. Like Castro's legacy is complicated. This Tapper is being a child with his reductiveness and like on my reductive characterization of him as a dictator. What do you think, Warnock? Like it's not that complicated.
And
Jake.
it's also just signaling to an audience that doesn't exist, that doesn't watch CNN, that we actually are very conciliatory towards this right-wing perspective, and we're going to be very fair and balanced by disingenuously asking this question that, like, I don't even think Tapper necessarily believes in his heart is the biggest problem, but like that they have to perform that, and it makes it disingenuous.
All right, let's do some IMs and then we'll get out of here because nobody's got a show to do.
Oh yeah.
Christo, absolute right. That one guy, what are your thoughts on term limits for the Senate and House? Traditionally, I've been against them, but I don't know. Steve from Kansas, I gotta think about it more.
Well, let the voters decide. Like, I mean, you could term limit out Bernie, but of course we get it. Like, I don't think age is the problem, and multiple terms. I think it's corruption more than anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at California has term limits. They just move from district, seat to seat. It's not necessarily a solution. You have to campaign finance, right?
Even from Kansas City, the talk of Alabama Democrats the other day reminded me of a great Reply All podcast last year about how the rising Doug Jones ran into deep racial divides within the party when he tried to pull DNC resources into the indebted state party. The party was essentially controlled by a black civil rights movement veteran who was still paranoid about Dixiecrats in 2019, adds context to what I think is irrelevant infighting. We're seeing episodes 152 to 154.
That's right. I forgot about that. Wow. Short-term memory.
Do we need a team of progressive programmers and data scientists like myself to build an alternative voter data system? Yes.
I think there's some folks working on it. I just don't know. I think more folks should work on it. Listen, I think that the marketplace needs strong competition, and this is a great opportunity for it.
Sam cleans Tushy. Okay, thank you. You might be considerably older than your co-host, but you are definitely the coolest. Oh, well, thank you. I don't get it. Boomers usually you're good people. I'm not.
Kind of backhanded or kind of insulting to me.
Kind of?
I think that's sexist, actually. Let's just call it what it is.
First of all, I'm not a boomer. All right? I'm not a boomer.
Yeah, he's Gen X.
I'm Gen X. Late.
Always forgotten.
Gotcha.
So that's like the most boomer thing that I actually about me is my
insistence
that I'm not a boomer. Soft alpha male. During yesterday's debate in the fun half, the audio kept clipping you out every time you were both talking. It was annoying. Yes, I'm aware of that, and I apologize.
We were giving Paul a advantage. It's like a handicap in golf.
Oh, okay. Wild card 2-6. See, Emma, there goes Emma again. Afghanistan is not a war crime, nor a war of aggression. Iraq was. May I remind you, the Taliban, the government of Afghanistan in the 90s, harbored bin Laden and al-Qaeda, who bombed us on 9/11. This lack of precision is what I was talking about, and it's pissing me off. Your implications are shit and disingenuous. You are correct. Pulling troops out is a planned process. We have the plan and ability.
The war at its outset was a legitimate war, but the fact that we stayed there and did commit multiple atrocities does constitute war criminals, and the fact that we're still there doesn't make any sense.
I mean, we definitely ship people to Guantanamo from Afghanistan, based upon bounties that we gave to basically people without really doing any proper vetting as to who these people were. I mean, I do not think that the invasion in Afghanistan in and of itself was a war crime, but there certainly was.
That wasn't even my implication. It's just the fact that we've remained there. I think I clarified that when we talked about it too.
Iraq definitely was.
Yes.
As well. Yeah. And incidentally, there's to say that there were war crimes committed there, it's not an attack on veterans. It is an attack on the civilian leadership that ordered people into this situation. Vast majority of the military in 2001, I mean, and you may know this better than I do, was there because they did not anticipate a war, or I should say, they were not anticipating a war, and so I think like you're imposing a conflation that doesn't exist.
Right, and there's certainly never like we didn't talk on this show about the soldiers themselves and the veterans themselves being responsible in any way for the geopolitical realities of the fact that we have been in these wars for far, far, far too long. And I think it's illegal at this point, even in Afghanistan. So I would never actually attack soldiers.
It'd be a miracle if an occupation that long without war crimes would be miraculous.
Right. I think the question is is the presence a war crime? Are the tactics a war crime? I mean, maybe that's what he's trying to say. Like you're saying that the actions on the ground are war crimes, that there are war crimes committed on the ground, which obviously there are.
Right.
And the continued state of being there is continuing
I think it's illegal to be continuing to be there now that apparently, we assassinated Osama bin Laden, we went after the Taliban, we did what we said there, and the fact that we continue to remain there remains a military occupation, which is not like legal because it's at this point it's not connected to the response to 9/11.
Right. But it's also being occupied by other forces too. So that's the whole geopolitical aspect.
They're at home too. Sam, why is? Oh yeah, we did that. What about creating a power vacuum in the region? I mean,
that's it.
Pirates of the Caribbean. Who is dumber, Dave Rubin or Michael Tracy? I think Dave Rubin.
Dave Rubin.
Yeah, that's Rubin.
Yeah, we gotta play with Dave Rubin. We gotta play this clip.
Totally.
This one is. Oh my God. Hey, what is that thing that you call, like when results come in, like what do you call, what is the adjective that you would say about results? Let's ask Dave Rubin, who's going to explain to us why we can't really know who won the election yet. It's because of the nature of the results. They're just not, what's the word I'm looking for?
Hello to all you freedom lovers out there, and those of you who are freedom haters, but watch this show just so that you can tweet angry things at me. How's it going, people? And thanks for the views.
It is
November 16th, 2020. We are just one day shy of 2 weeks from that election that we had, and we still don't really have results. We've got the AP saying we've got results, and we've got CNN saying we're results. But no results have been certified. We don't have results in like a resulty sort of way. If you care about the system that's supposed to tell us how everything works, we've got news organizations that have told us something has happened. There's a lot going on in the world. As you guys know, I was in Dallas last week. It was
pause it for 1 second. So incidentally, there's dates by which these things need to be certified by. That's not like willy nilly. The states just don't go like, hey, let's just whatever. I mean, this is
results in a resultsy, statesy sort of way with the votes kind of votesy.
The way that it worksies.
Right.
And
well, what I was just like, okay, so if there are 4 of us on screen right now, or 3 of us on screen, and 2 of us agree with what, does that not mean that the 2 of you have have won this little decision? Like they're very clear.
It's not like there's 2 or 3, like there's 2 news outlets that are predicting that Joe Biden, or has basically called the race for Joe Biden, and one that says, wait a second, we have data otherwise. No, it's people are just using math, and they're using the number of votes, and they're calling it. And if they're wrong, then at the end, you could say it's not like the Supreme Court is deciding a court case based upon the fact that it's been called. There's no case that's going to the Supreme Court. Every case they've had has fallen, flat on its face. The idea that they've been holding back on their real case for 2 weeks now is just absurd. This is just their way of basically, trying to set up the idea that somehow Joe Biden didn't win. But sadly, Dave Rubin doesn't have the sort of the intellectual firepower to really carry it off. So
I think OWN said that they weren't real. I don't know if you guys have checked the pollsters there.
Isn't OWN Oprah's network and OANN is the right?
Yeah, I don't know. Whatever you call it. Does Oprah still have a network?
I think it's over. I think
OWN is over?
I think so.
Oh, well, sad.
All right, let me do a bunch of these IMs, then we'll get out of here. Trey from Maryland, Pittsburgh. Thanks, guys, for having the option to remain a member when you fall on hard times. I appreciate all the work you do and would love the show far from my dad, who's been on events since early spring. Sure. Dad, get better. What are the crew's thoughts on the eventual direction of the Republican Party moving towards 2022? Not good would be my quick answer. We don't have time for a long.
I think they're in good shape. Unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly. Chainsaw Billy. I see what you're saying. Yes. Electorally, they're looking good.
Sorry.
Chainsaw Billy. Paul's bots coming at you. Just so you promise. No, we already said that. Kentucky Fried Comrade. Hey, I'm our crew. Been a while since I am. Just wanted to let you know that thank you to the community for you guys have accidentally made. Shout out to Jeff from Georgia. I think we're all thinking of you. Lastly, sorry, Sam, for the Jenk Seder thread. I don't even know what that one is, but Rabbit from Boston.
They combined your faces in like this animation, and it was super freaky.
Oh, no.
I have to see this. Where is that?
I'll find it.
Would like to request more random rush bits. As you know, we might not have too many days to enjoy Limbaugh. Yeah, that's a good point. Hey, Cardi B for Veep, all par, that said say was at least 10 years old info. Rob Cully, judging from the nonsense Paul was shouting down the line at you yesterday, I think his ear on the ground has tinnitus. Also, get well soon, Jeff. Jim Apes, whoever captioned the Instagram post about Ben Shapiro sounding like an enunciating vibrator needs a raise. Biden's actual campaign slogan, if you like your Republican, you can keep them. Comrade Mario, Joe Biden just tapped Cedric Richmond to serve as liaison between the business community and climate activists. He is one of the largest recipients of oil and gas money, and his own district has an area known as Cancer Alley.
Yep.
Oh, jeez.
There's going to be a special election there now, too.
Foreign agent. Biden and other establishment Dems insisting that compromise with Republicans for the sake of national unity is like your mother insisting that you come to Thanksgiving dinner for the sake of family unity, even though you were molested by at least... Okay, all right. And the final
COVID
of the day. Oh, that's not right. Hey, Sam, y'all mentioned DMT the other day. Jamie said she wasn't a fan. A lot of different versions. There's a version called Bufo, a toad poison. It's up to 15-minute trip used therapeutically in Europe, South America, and Mexico. Okay. Still into clinical trials in the U.S. Treats depression, anxiety, addiction, trauma, stress, arthritis. People across the spectrum do it. It's pretty magical, life-changing stuff. Done in a safe, calm, safe with good administrators. Couldn't recommend it enough.
What's it called?
Let me know if the MR
DMT
and NYC can talk further. Well, I don't know.
That's the Rogan's thing.
Is that right?
That's his psychedelic choice.
DMT,
yeah, I got to wait till the kids are out of the house.
Go read that Michael Pollan book. It's pretty interesting if you haven't read it.
Oh, no, I am not. I am not. Oh, my God. He just sent me that thing with Jenk and yeesh.
I know.
Wow, that is disturbing. All right, folks. Nomi, Emma, Matt, Brendan, good job today. See you. Oh, and tune into Nomi's show.
Yes.
Wow.
Like 5 minutes from now. I have to set up a little bit.
Nowsy.
Thanks, guys. See you. Sorry about the noise.
To get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in.